securities statutes that lending generally, because they define it as a note or a bond, can be considered a security. And banks are different, and so but generally, if you're selling an instrument or providing an instrument that's providing you're someone's putting up money, you're getting an interest rate, that's basically a note, and that is a security. That I would agree with. What he didn't get the question about is why pick on Coinbase, because only because they went to the regulators first and kind of asked permission, because there's so many other products out there that are doing what Coinbase is doing. So I personally think it's selective enforcement, but he didn't get that question. He talked about SPACs, which I don't know if you want to get into here at all. Do you want me to do it?
I want to know what Gary Gensler thinks about SPACs. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So on SPACs, and I think the questions he got, which I would kind of agree with a lot of his answers, they need better disclosure, particularly regarding redemptions on SPACs, because what's happening is in some SPACs, when there are redemptions, and I'm not going to even get into what for this room. Okay. In certain cases, in certain SPACs, the redemptions are disclosed.
Yeah.
In certain cases, the redemptions are not disclosed.
Yeah.
And the other issue with SPACs is, and I made this point in the room that Cal opened up, one of the problems is, and this is different than the way blank checks used to be 20, 30 years ago. Everyone says they've always existed. 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't make the types of liberal projections that you can do now with SPACs. Okay, so, and that's a problem, because when you go to a typical IPO, you can't make those projections. So one of the reasons people were doing SPACs was because you get to make all sorts of wild projections to get people to invest that you're not even allowed to do when you're going public to a traditional route. So that was so we even though Gensler didn't touch on that so much, but I just wanted to bring that up. He got more questions about the redemptions and because it was one particular big case where there was a fraud. He also touched upon, because we talk about a lot about China here. He talked about these variable interest entities and the way that Chinese stocks work here. And they also had, by the way, before Gensler went on, they had Kyle Bass, who's a major hedge fund manager, who talked about the Chinese companies listed here. I don't think a lot of people know this, are subject to a 3-year exemption on accounting regulations that almost any other company, even other foreign companies, are not. This is like some deal Trump made with China. And what Kyle Bass was saying, he thinks that they should change that and basically bring it into about a year, because one of the reasons you may have some issues is that they don't have the same transparency as every other company. But one thing I'd be concerned about in terms of investing in Chinese companies, if the Chinese government 3 years from now, if we don't change the rules, decides, hey, you know what, we run our own stuff, it's nobody's business, all these stocks are going to be delisted. Okay, so that's a kind of a problem. And why I'm on that subject, I should say two other things, by the way. Though Gensler and they spoke about this, what's termed variable interest and is a little bit different, but people should still be concerned about that, because that whole concept is what and it helped lead to. And also, I wanted to mention, which wasn't Tyler was on CMZ Ed companies and Didi and casino companies there operate under a concession or a license that expires in 2022, and so now they're determining, mostly Wynn in Las Vegas Sands, cede some of your equity to people over there. Okay. And so that's is because before this happened yesterday, we could have actually looked policy reason unique to that area why the Chinese got jabbed these issues. I actually thought, because I knew this concession thing was coming with the casinos, I thought it was an opportunity for the Chinese government to say, hey, we're really not anti-capitalist, and not do what they did yesterday. Because I don't think the public policy issues as say Chinese ed tech or video games for kids or whatever. But nonetheless, they went that other direction. And so I think they'll be more concerned about this whole issue about communist capitalism, and they also had Ray Dalio on, by the way, today, CNBC.
Yes.
And did you see that, Tyler?
No, what do you say?
He's
So
so pro-China.
Oh, I watch it.
yeah, he's still very pro-China. So Ray basically, the only thing Ray said was that he didn't deal with he didn't really get into the issues that I just mentioned, but he just basically said, look, there's going to be two really big economies. There already are, China and the United States, and do you want to put all your eggs in one basket in the United States? He was making comments, as you know, and he wrote some pieces in the weeks leading after the EdTech, saying, oh, that's about EdTech, that's about unique public policy issues, and it doesn't really have their view of socialism or capitalism, whatever their views on those issues are. But the way that they acted with the casinos, I think, flies in the face of his position. By the way,
Yeah. So who was it? Somebody that joins us every day sent in this tweet. Gabby sent in this one just a few hours ago from Straits Times out of Singapore, right down the road from Macau. And it says, the headline from Straits Times says, Macau casinos see $24 billion wipeout as China tightens grip. Macau's top gaming stocks lost a record of 18 billion US dollars in combined market value on Wednesday, September 15th, after officials and operators in building is that, it's like, looks like a big explosion in the sky. It's kind of hard to describe. And then I took a taxi over to where the Paris Eiffel Tower building is.
Oh, that one. So you've been to Cotai. So if you think about Cotai, if you've been to Cotai, then that's
it's a lot like Vegas.
Actually,
it's very, very similar to Vegas.
No, right, but it's right. So it's a really big, a big strip, if you will.
Yes.
Actually, I think the walking distances are maybe even longer.
Yeah, you feel like you're in Vegas because the scale is so large.
It was built by Sheldon Adelson, who owns the Venetian here. Or, but in terms of revenue, you have to look at win per table is like multiple times what it is in the United States, because culturally they just gamble, so much more.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be a $300. If you bet $300 a hand here, you're kind of a high roller, right? Relatively. Over there, that's considered like pedestrian.
Yeah.
In the US,
So this is Vinay. I have a casino as a client, and they use something called gross gaming revenue, GGR. In 2019, and I have the 2019 numbers off the top of my head, Vegas was 6.5 billion. Macau was 28 billion.
Wow.
Just to give you the scale, right?
So it says the Bloomberg Intelligence Index of the 6 big casino operators fell 23%. American operators saw the worst sell-offs, with Sands China sinking as much as 33%, while Wynn Macau plunged 34%. Both the steepest declines. There you go, steep declines right there. Right there.
No, but be careful, Tyler. Because I don't want to confuse you. You wouldn't know this. With Sands and Wynn, there are two different stocks. There's a China stock or a Macau stock that only represents their Chinese holdings.
Okay.
That trade in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can even buy on an ADR. But also, they're American stocks because the American companies own the majority interest in the China.
Yep.
They also trade here. So I think what you're talking about, Wynn Macau and Sands China, are specifically only represent the Chinese stocks, which is fine to point it out that they lost, they lost a lot of value too. But also the American versions of this, and those are not ADRs. The American companies that also own their Vegas assets and everything else also suffered steep declines. Use your term for those two particular companies, because Wynn and Sands as a corporate entity are very dependent on China, more so than, let's say, MGM, because MGM's got casinos in Macau too, but they have a much larger footprint in the United States. Yeah. So Macau doesn't matter as much. So MGM was down less.
So officials in Macau, the only place in China where gambling is legal, said they would begin a 45-day public consultation period starting September 15th to discuss the legal revisions. Among the topics covered, how many licenses, known locally as concessions, would be allowed, how long their terms would be, and the level of supervision by the government, While license renewals have been expected for some time, as the current ones expire next June, the move to tighten regulatory control took the industry by surprise. Besides appointing government representatives, the revisions also propose increasing local shareholdings of casino companies without elaboration on how these moves would be enacted. Dismay rippled through the industry players and analysts after the announcement of China's ongoing clampdown on sectors from gaming to after-school tutoring appears to have reached Macau at last. Here's the quote. The casino issues are a continuation of what's been a pretty big crackdown, said Jason Adder, the chief executive of New York-based investment manager
Jason
Spring.
Ader, he's a good friend of mine, by the way. I've known him all my life. Yes.
I
can get him on here if you want, by the way.
Sure. I would love to hear his perspective on this. His quote here says, there's a debate over whether China is even investable right now. You never like to see increased regulation, increased taxes, restrained movement. That all seems to be the status quo. JP Morgan Chase analyst DS Kim downgraded the 6 operators to sell or neutral weightings. We think this announcement would have already planted a seed of doubt in investors' mind, which is probably enough to derate these names until clarity emerges on key points. The tightened scrutiny comes at a time when Macau is still struggling to recover from COVID-19 pandemic, which is a great point. And now it was
I
like,
had a friend of mine.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Tyler. I was just going to say I had a friend of mine that was actually there at Macau, and throughout the pandemic, he was just saying that it was a mass exodus and everybody was just leaving, and he was so upset about it because there was just nothing that they can do. So I'm wondering if they're starting to go back again. So he went to Vegas, but he told me that eventually, when things change, that he's definitely going to go back, and he absolutely loved his quality of life there. But yeah, there was a huge problem because of the pandemic.
China also, by the way, has like very much stricter rules on how they deal with COVID. So they do like total shutdowns. And one of the other issues apparently yesterday that probably played into it, there were 22 COVID cases, which doesn't sound like a lot by American standards. There were 22 COVID cases in the province of Fujian, and Fujian is the province that's just north of Guangdong, and Guangdong is where most of the Chinese gamblers come from for Macau. Let me say something else. You mentioned Jason Ader, who, like I said, I've known him like for forever and ever, and good friend of mine. What's interesting about his comment, even though he no longer is, up until a couple of years ago, he was actually on the. So he knows this area, pretty well. And so for him to say that China, I didn't see his quote, for him to say China may not be investable is pretty interesting.
It says China has been clamping down on activity by VIP punters in Macau for several years now over concerns that the high-stakes betting there, which takes place in Hong Kong dollars, can sometimes be an illicit channel for currency outflows and money laundering. Beijing has also cracked down on organized gambling trips to Macau and other overseas destinations organized by junkets, companies that service high rollers and extend them credit amid a wider effort to discourage casino gambling. And then later in the article it says, while China has been tightening its scrutiny over Macau gambling sector for years, Tuesday's move comes as Beijing undertakes a widespread crackdown on business and society. Initially focused on the growing influence of China's tech giants, the campaign has taken a moralistic tone, targeting children's video game use to after-school tutoring. The Communist Party has long had a dim view of gambling, citing its impact on families and linking it to social disharmony. Nonetheless, Chinese are avid gamblers, with the increased oversight of Macau pushing them to less regulated markets like the Philippines and Cambodia, where casinos and online gaming operations are flourishing despite a pandemic halted travel. Mr. Adder said it was unlikely a Western operator like Sands would lose its license, although the overall climate for foreign companies in the country is deteriorating. And they give him the last word. His quote says, "It's sort of all going in the wrong direction in China." He said, "To that extent, investors are nervous about China. Macau doesn't feel like the place it was 5 years ago for a lot of reasons." For those who don't know, China essentially has built 100 casinos simultaneously in the last few years in Cambodia. in Sukunaville. And that town has changed from a sleepy beach town into a new Macau. That sounds ridiculous, but go get on YouTube and see with your own eyes. It's perhaps the fastest real estate boom the planet has ever seen, even by Chinese standards, even by Shenzhen standards. 100 casinos simultaneously in construction. So China has essentially, this I'm using Cambodians' own quotes in the documentary that the BBC did when they went there. China has taken over Cambodia, and they have direct flights to service these casinos. So this could be, as this article points out, maybe potentially a huge boom for those Cambodian casinos. Chris?
This kind of signals, I'm sorry, Vinay. This signals some activity that's really consistent with what China's trying to do culturally. They're like trying to purify their culture, right? So if they made gambling illegal on the mainland or in Macau, there would still be somewhere they need to get their rocks off, so to speak, right? And
It's
if they
already
keep it,
illegal in the mainland. By the way, you can't
if
even
they keep it out
advertise a
of the
Macau
country,
casino on the mainland.
okay.
No.
Well, if they
So
keep it,
one of the things about this whole casino thing is in Macau or Cambodia is many of the wealthy Chinese have been using that as a way to get their money out of
I was
China.
about to say, yeah.
And there was Cheryl might know, there was a story 4 or 5 years ago, the income tax department of Singapore, there was a sale of an apartment, very, very expensive apartment in Singapore from one Chinese to another at 20% of the market value. And when they kind of traced it, supposedly these two Chinese folks in Macau um, played poker or something. One guy lost against the other, huge amount of money. So the guy who won the money took the money to Singapore, bought an apartment with that money, and then 6 months later or 8 months later sold it to the first Chinese who had lost all the money at 20% of the value. So it was a interesting way to get their money out of China. And the guy who bought it kept the rest of that money in Singapore. And the income tax department in Singapore said there's no property transactions that can happen at 20% of the value, not in Singapore for sure. Right? I don't know, Cheryl, if you remember that story.
There's also,
Hit the rounds about 3 4 years ago.
I've been hearing stories from friends on the ground there that there's a really bizarre gold and watch and diamond movements between the Macau and mainland border. That and so they're even being very screening for people with, you know, any unnormal amounts of gold or watches or diamonds or whatever, because it's people. That's how people are physically getting their money out, is buying diamonds and gold and watches and taking it out that way to Macau.
Yeah, and my estimate is, or my guesstimate is that with all this crackdown on ed tech and everything else, all these Chinese millionaires and billionaires are watching their stock market value just drop. So they're ditching it, trying to get their money out, right? So you got to shut down the avenues which they can get their money out.
Yeah.
And gambling is another one of them.
Yeah.
But by
Okay.
the way, just like the article said, by the way, Tyler, a lot of the crackdowns on the junkets and the super high end and all of some of the ways that money was going out, that's already stopped several years ago. So that's why I think people were surprised by this action yesterday, because they've already dealt with a lot of those issues. I mean, there's much less, junkets. Some of the junket operators have collapsed. Um, most of the players are now what they call premium mass, and premium mass would be kind of just like normal wealthy people, who just want to have like a good time, like just like they would
Yeah.
go to Vegas, and they don't bet extraordinary amounts of money. They bet higher than an American might bet, but they're not betting extraordinary amounts of money. And they're going, for the overall experience, because there's, as you know, you've been there, and this was a requirement of the Chinese government there. They had to build a lot of non-casino amenities, so there's a lot of shopping and a lot of other things you can do there.
I'm kicking
Can I
myself.
slightly disagree with you, because in the last couple of years, Macau's gaming revenue went up by 28%. If the super wealthy weren't coming in and just the average Chinese, they wouldn't be spending that much. So I
It
do
is.
know
It
average
is.
Chinese.
It is premium. It's defined as premium mass. You can look at the publicly traded reports that they. It's not the VIP business. It's premium mass that's driving those numbers.
Oh yeah. But there were also the premium mass were being given money, and there's examples I know of. Were given, hey, here's $4 or $5 million. Can you go spend that in Macau and lose at this table to this person? So the average guy who was going to take his couple of 100,000 suddenly had another 4 million to take of somebody else's money
That's
with them.
true in a poker game, and let me tell you that may be true in poker where you lose to another player. I don't think that's true necessarily because otherwise you're losing to the house. And the difference is the poker numbers are not in the gaming numbers. So poker's a whole different entity. So yeah, you could wash some money easier on a poker table than you could on a baccarat table. So I don't know if we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah. There were also side games that were happening a lot in rooms and stuff there. So there's a whole. It wasn't always just a casino. Anyway, but it's still an avenue to get money out for many of the Chinese.
Okay, so the next one is, well, actually, we didn't. That was the first story of the interesting tweets that people are finding. As an appetizer, we have yet to actually go through the top big tweets and headlines that everyone's sharing. And no surprise, the most commonly shared story at the moment is Apple's iPhone 13 and 13 Pro are first to support dual eSIM. That was not mentioned during the live stream event. That's kind of interesting. Expanding on support for eSIM and regular SIMs in previous phones. Dual eSIMs. Actually, before we go through the big ones, Cal, I'm wondering, did you have any takes on the Apple event yesterday?
Yeah, I because I went off to a kind of a LinkedIn type event yesterday on Clubhouse. I missed that. I was like, as we discussed, I missed a lot of it, but I looked it up afterwards. And the headline, I'm not buying a new iPhone.
Yeah.
I wish that little the mini iPad, the
iPad
mini
mini.
iPad
Yeah.
had a
iPad
better
Mini 6,
camera.
yeah.
Yeah, if you had a better camera, I'd probably replace my iPhone with that. I don't know. I'd think about it. But other than that, I'm waiting for that big
Well, that's
MacBook.
because we're getting old and our vision's getting bad, and a mini iPad
Yes,
sounds like
yes, that's what it is.
I
That's
know
exactly
exactly
what it
what you're
is.
thinking. Yes, you're like, phone. No, I need a bigger phone. Give me a double-sized
Hey,
phone.
Well, we're
Something.
hitting the age where the telephone's going to start getting the big numbers. Remember when we were a kid?
The iPad Mini is a suitable size for reading on. The iPhones are just even the iPro, the Pro Max is still just. Can we make this thing a bit bigger so I get a bigger font on this thing?
I just thought about it as you guys were talking this is out. Like, I have the Apple Watch and I get phone calls on it. Why can't I just use my watch and have an iPad and just get rid of the phone? Because I have the Pro. I have the
And
12
the
inch.
watch is bigger too, right? It's 20% bigger
Yep.
than the
Yeah,
last
so I
Pro.
can actually get rid of my phone, just get another watch, get rid of the phone, and just keep my iPads and the watch.
And speak to your optometrist or ophthalmologist. All of staring at the phones is what's damaging our eyes, accelerating the damage of the eyes too, our vision.
I read a bit because I was actually checking for my dad. Actually, the iPad Mini 6 still do not function as a phone, as in you can't really receive incoming call unless you use the like WhatsApp or Messenger, the other messenger.
That's fine.
So yeah, you need to leave it. I think they say you need to leave it on, and then you need to on the Wi-Fi calling or whatever thing in order to receive it on
Just connect
iPad
it to
Mini.
your watch, like you said, and then you get a notification on your watch. Someone's trying to call you on WhatsApp.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
you still need a phone. I mean, at least a phone. Yeah.
Get
I'm
some.
actually going to try that out. I'm going to see if I can cancel my phone plan and just use my watch now.
But Cal, is there, before we get into the popular headlines, was there one that you found on a tweet or headline that you've seen since we met last that caught your eye?
No. I'm good.
You good?
I'll fish one out.
I have
Okay.
one,
I do want to
Tyler.
make one comment though. Just
Yeah.
one thing. I'll just take a little bit.
Yeah.
You know how we have a wonderful partnership with the Politics Club, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Justin's not here now, but and how it's really important for us as a community to support Justin's room.
Yeah.
And to kind of move that, so we get new guests and the
Yeah.
quality improves. You get these amazing politicians that come on
Yeah.
and reporters. Similarly, I want to just call out Todd if he's still here. Todd's still there. Yeah. Are you on stage,
Please.
Todd? Yeah. Todd and Greg, right?
Uh-huh.
They're just amazing orchestrators of getting, I think, really, really senior corporate people on here,
Yeah.
right? Now that's good for us all, right?
Yep.
Because what happens is they come on here, they have the CTO of Accenture, and that's not a small position.
No,
He's very, very
that's
influential.
huge.
Paul is very influential, right?
Accenture,
The,
Accenture.
yeah,
By the way, it makes somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion a year just doing moderation for Facebook, and that's one client out of thousands of clients. They have hundreds of thousands of employees globally.
yeah, I mean, on many fronts, they're very influential,
Yes.
right? Because one, they have all these clients around the world.
Yeah.
And I used to way back, that was my second job ever. So I also admire them as an employer. And also as somebody who bought their consulting, as they were a big partner of Best Buy's. But Paul, who's the CTO, is also responsible for AI there. And Cami and Paul had a discussion yesterday as well. And but you know what I would just call out is that people like Paul, especially on this platform too, right, would just like love it, and his people and other people like him and some of his clients, etc. So what Greg and Todd did yesterday was really, I think, a step in the right direction, and we should all support it. That we get people like that on, and they get excited about this platform, and they start discussing it, and they find it exciting. Especially people like him. He's creative, he's different, he's human. But he's there with at a very senior position in a company that's very influential. So I just wanted to call that out. Take that moment to do that. That's what I would do. Get more of these people on board, and Todd and Greg. They're doing some amazing
Yeah.
work there.
True. And so if they don't jump up on stage that often because they're kind of more action prone, more doer than talker. So, but when they do get on stage, yeah, if you can find them in the audience, do follow them. So, but by the way, I just found a tweet that you did an hour ago. That's a great one, which is about Ray Dalio, where it says during that interview, I assume with CNBC, Ray Dalio says if Bitcoin is really successful, that the regulators will kill it.
Yeah. And my comment was, but by the way, he was also bullish China in the last few months.
Yeah.
So yeah.
He's been saying that for weeks, by the way. I mean, so there's nothing new there. But
yeah, I'm just wishing we would have had the foresight to know they were going to crack down on the casinos because it's a 30% movement in one day. Now, in hindsight, it seems obvious, actually.
So
well, Tyler, I followed the casino industry almost as a career. I mean, like I've done a lot of. I mean, obviously, I live in Vegas. I've done a lot of work with casinos. I was a casino analyst on Wall Street. I did not see this coming. I
Yep.
actually, quite frankly, as I said, I thought maybe they would take the opposite tact and try to show we're not against all capitalism and be a little bit lighter than they were because of all the other issues with Chinese ed tech and Didi and everything else. So this was not really foreseeable.
But
do we
actually,
know how much?
they are cramming down addiction. Remember, gambling is addiction.
Do we know how much market cap has been lost in China since all of this has happened?
Over $1 trillion, they said, and that was
Oh my
before this.
God.
That was before the gambling one. What are they saying the total on the gambling was? It wasn't that much, but it's not just addiction. It's addiction and what's the other and potential money laundering. You have both.
Oh yes.
Those are two of the things they want to crack down on simultaneously.
Yes.
And then there's
I
that
need
$300 billion loss, right? That they're with that company. I forgot the name. That
Oh yeah, Evergrande. Yeah, that one's 30% of $1 trillion by itself. Jesus. Yeah, they might get to $2 trillion by the end of this.
But Cheryl, the point which Cheryl made, though, they knew the Chinese government knew what they were getting into when they took over Macau. Okay, which was like I think when it, 90s, I think.
Yeah, around the same time as Hong Kong. Yeah.
Same time as Hong Kong, right? Yeah, roughly, right. So when they took over Macau, the only casinos in Macau were kind of like old and decrepit, and it was a monopoly controlled by the family of Stanley Ho, and that's all that was there. The Chinese government made a deliberate decision to open the casino industry there to American and Australian operators, and to allow them to build these new glitzy things, and they did a lot of things the right way. They said, look, we don't want just casinos, so you have to build so many hotel rooms, and Sheldon Adelson, who was again the late Sheldon Adelson, who had started the Venetian here. But the whole key with the Venetian here, for Tyler, you know this because you've done a lot of things with conferences and you understand, the mice business. A lot of the things about the Venetian here was the Sands Convention Center that
Yeah. Oh,
originally
big time.
with Comdex and everything else.
Big
So
time.
that's how Sheldon sold it to the
Right.
Chinese government, and he really made a tremendous effort to build a mice business there, and I just don't think it just takes time, and they're doing it, but they had to put a lot of money into non-gaming things, and they have, and so they've been following that direction, and I think a lot of the American operators may feel a little bit burnt because they've been very good Boy Scouts over there, doing what the government asked them to do in terms of particularly investing in non gaming attractions, and trying to bring in convention business and shopping. And there's a lot of shopping over there. There's big retail malls. And so, I mean, it did come as a surprise, even to me,
Yeah.
but at this point, what they did. I mean, I always thought there was kind of a risk, but I always thought the risk was political, Tyler, not about this stuff. I thought the risk might be the Chinese government because of the American China situations. If something happened with Taiwan, if there was some other issue of Biden or whatever with cracking down on China, that the Chinese government may retaliate versus the American casino companies. So I thought that may have been the reason, but other than that, I wouldn't have seen this, and I think
Yeah.
they didn't see it.
I gotcha. So the top story of the day technically is, and again, these are the big headlines that everyone's sharing. These are not the interesting ones are the ones we're talking about now, like this crackdown on Macau that is not being reported by the tech media generally because it's a little outside of the scope of tech. But and there's other really interesting stories. The most interesting stories we're going to get to in a minute. First, we're going to get through the big stories like the Apple iPhone 13 and the whole big Apple event that we live streamed here yesterday. So we don't really need to go through those headlines. The second biggest headline is that the Department of Justice court documents 3 former U.S. Intel operatives who worked as mercenary hackers for the UAE, United Arab Emirates, faces charges of conspiring to violate hacking laws. So the U.S. Department of Justice has fined 3 former NSA employees who worked as hackers for hire for the UAE. I'm muting Demolaire because I was hearing myself as an echo. The next big article is from The Verge. Microsoft will let users access accounts without a password from today by using Microsoft Authenticator, Windows Hello, a security key, or a verification code. The next one's from the Wall Street Journal that internal documents, Facebook's own research found that a 2018 change to encourage positive interactions had the opposite effect. Zuckerberg resisted fixing it. Internal memos. So now there's 2 really interesting things about this article. Number one, 99.9999% of people who see this headline are going to read this headline just like we just did. Wall Street Journal, internal documents show that Facebook's own research found that in 2018, their change to their algorithm encouraged positive interactions, which was meant to encourage positive interactions, had in fact the opposite effect. It had negative interactions. And Zuckerberg, after the fact, in light of this, you would think, oh, well, they're going to fix that. No, Zuckerberg resisted fixing the changes. Now, we here at Tech News Around the World, we're kind of a special group of crazy kids over in the corner. And we know that this is actually super more interesting than anyone realizes for a really interesting reason. This is now 4 days in a row that the Wall Street Journal has found internal documents from Facebook about Facebook with a headline about negative, shady shit that Zuckerberg himself is partly responsible for, that Facebook is untrustworthy. Correct me if I'm wrong. Those of you who join us every day, is this or is this not the 4th article in 4 days from the Wall Street Journal throwing serious shade in an investigative journalist type way, which implies that the Wall Street Journal must have an internal leaker at Facebook providing these internal documents.
Remember his
Yeah,
Did,
the
tweets.
Wall
did
Street
did
Journal
someone
is
say
doing it.
inside leak?
Hang on, Dr.
The Wall
Francine.
Street
Francine.
the Wall Street Journal is doing a takedown on Facebook. I think the way they're doing a takedown of Theranos, and I'm sure they do have an inside leaker. Uh, why not? But they don't even need one, because today's article that I read said that they always knew that Instagram made teenagers feel bad about their bodies, but they
That was
said,
yesterday's.
oh, that was yesterday's. Okay.
No, but
So,
there was been 4 in a row. This is the point.
yeah, I
What
know.
what is
But that's what they did. That's what they did. That's what John Carrier did about Theranos. They do when they really want to get you, they do a series.
Yeah, so they are,
So, so,
I think.
so,
Go,
so Tyler,
one second, one second,
59
what,
minutes ago.
one second, one
Sorry.
second, one second, one second. So guess who wrote the article? I mean, we even said the guy's name yesterday, as we literally called this dude's. And he, by the way, I don't recall that this guy wrote the article yesterday that Francine's referring to, which was the Facebook knew that Instagram, based on their own there was an internal presentation, and on one of the slides it said, "We are hurting young girls." Instagram is causing serious problems in mental health issues with young females, who are the majority of users of Instagram, by the way. And
1/3.
and
He did.
yet
He
and
did
yet
write it.
and the real smoking gun was when asked before Congress, when Mark Zuckerberg was being questioned before Congress, and they said, you must have some kind of internal research about how your products are impacting your users. And he says, yeah, well, there's certainly there's studies, and the studies that we've seen show that it's a very positive thing. When the reality is, he knew goddamn well it was the opposite, that it's causing all kinds of mental anguish for its young female users. Now, that was yesterday's article, and I don't recall that Jeff Horowitz wrote that he was in the byline. He was there was, I think, 4 people listed as on the byline of that article yesterday. But we said it seems like Jeff Horowitz is on the mission here. Like, he's perhaps one of the main instigators of this series, this takedown series, of which today's article is the 4th in a row in 4 days. And today's is Facebook tried to make its platform a healthier place. It got angrier instead. And even after that realization, they just said, well, so be it. There's more engagement. The numbers are up and to the right. Whether if the fact that it's negative and not positive is not the main issue here. So I'm trying to remember what the other 2 articles was. I know one of them was 4 days. What started this series off 4 days ago.
The access.
The data, where they had told, it was now been revealed that Facebook had provided data to a bunch of researchers and had told the researchers this is the entirety US population data. And then the researchers found out that it's not, it's only half. And Facebook knew that it was not the whole data, that it was only half. So they knew they were lying to these researchers, and so every report you've seen about Facebook user data since 2019 is wrong, because the people who did the research were given insufficient data knowingly by Facebook. They had cherry picked out the data. So that was 4 days ago. 3 days ago, there was a separate one, which is escaping my mind yet again.
So,
It was about
sorry,
the VIP.
Tyler.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tyler. The Wall Street Journal, 59 minutes ago,
Yeah.
put out a story. I've just tweeted it to you. It's called the Facebook Files, which lists each story number 1, story number 2, story number 3, and story number 4.
Perfect.
It's actually just tweeted it out to you. And if you look at Jeff
See, I
Horowitz's,
told you it was a
yeah,
takedown.
But we said
yeah,
yesterday, but Francine,
Yeah,
we
we said that
this
yesterday.
yesterday. We
It's
said
funny.
24 hours ago. Hey, is it when the 3rd story came out? We read the 3rd headline together, and I said, "Hey guys, am I crazy? Or there was an article yesterday that was negative on Facebook, and there was an article 48 hours ago that was negative about Facebook, and am I crazy? Or are they all by the Wall Street Journal?" And Vinay looked up the articles and said they're all by the Wall Street Journal. I said, you know what? These guys are doing a hit job, just as you said. And so now that this 4th one has come out 4 days in a row, from the Wall Street Journal. And so when I read the headline, I said, most people are going to read this and just read it at face value, but we're reading it on a whole extra dimension that everyone's missing, which is the Wall Street Journal's done 4 articles in a row, 4 days in a row, all based on internal documents and internal information that journalists normally shouldn't have access to. And they've got somebody inside who's
and Horowitz is actually soliciting. Remember, his tweet says, "If you have anything on Facebook,
his Twitter bio. Yeah, he's like, here's my personal cell phone number. If you got some juice, send it my way.
By,
So
Yeah,
by the
he's
way,
been writing about Facebook for
yeah,
quite
he's
some
got a
time now. I've just looked at his bio on Wall Street Journal, and he's got about 8 articles on Facebook just like this year.
Okay, so
not
check
even
this
more
out.
than that.
Vinay just found the goods here. It says, and let me tweet this out for everybody's.
Tyler, hang on. I've got
Yes.
another bit of news.
Okay.
Jeff Horowitz an hour ago tweeted, story number 3, headed up by Keith Hagee, is about a change in Facebook's newsfeed ranking that made political parties and publishers rely more on negative and sensationalism for distribution. Facebook made public conversation angrier. So
that's right.
He's wrote about 3 articles on Facebook a month.
Right. But check this out. So it says, this just came out within the past hour from the Wall Street Journal. They call it the Facebook Files, a Wall Street Journal investigation. Facebook knows in acute detail that its platforms are riddled with flaws that cause harm, often in ways only the company fully understands. This is the central finding of a Wall Street Journal series based on a review of internal Facebook documents, including research reports, online employee discussions, and drafts of presentations to senior management. Time and again, the documents show Facebook's researchers have identified the platform's ill effects. Time and again, despite congressional hearings, its own pledges, and numerous media exposés, the company didn't fix them. The documents offer perhaps the clearest picture thus far of how broadly Facebook's problems are known inside the company, up to the chief executive himself. Number 1, Facebook says its rules apply to all. Company documents reveal a secret elite that's exempt. This is the VIP list. It's called X-Check or Cross-Check. And this was the story 3 days ago, the Cross-Check article about this whitelist of 6 million users who are allowed to break all of Facebook's policies and rules and not get punished for it. That was one of the 4 stories. Now, story number 2. Facebook knows Instagram is toxic for many teen girls, company documents show. As you said, that one, Jeff was included in that byline. Georgia Wells, Jeff Horowitz, and Deepa Siarathaman. And number 3, Facebook tried to make its platform a healthier place. It got angrier instead by Keith Hagee and Jeff Horowitz. And
that's the one with Jonah Peretti in it. But let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
The fact that they're doing all these articles is in a series is now clear. So what do you think the Wall Street Journal, which is a Murdoch newspaper, what is the Wall Street Journal?
I love that you threw that little important little anecdote in there.
Yeah. Well, they don't just do shit, out of the goodness of their heart. They have a purpose, and their purpose must be to get the attention of, I don't know, is it Congress to have another hearing?
I was told to look at Xiaomi like yesterday when we were speaking about this. Someone in the back channel said that, but I just wanted to know it.
I imagine that is. I think they want to see they just want to hurt Facebook and for those who missed the importance of Francine's point about the Murdochs, that Murdoch is a gangster and he sees Facebook
exactly. So he's got a reason.
Yeah.
And his reason is either, going after some congressional something or other, or going after Facebook's advertisers.
Yeah.
I
think he feels like Facebook's coming after him because
they're sort of at war in Australia, right?
Yeah. That's where I would kind of point. There's an interesting when the Australian a big headline that came out. This was about 6 months ago, where it's still very fresh in my mind because it's actually inadvertently led to the birth of tech news around the world. Actually, which was there was a headline and it was huge, and it said, Australia makes a ruling that Facebook now has to pay for links that any user in Facebook puts in Facebook in Australia to news publishers. And Rupert Murdoch in Australia kind of runs the media game down in Australia. So it was assumed, and with good reason to assume, that the Murdochs were actually pushing Australia's parliament to pass that, because Australia's parliament doesn't give a shit, but the publishers in Australia do, which is namely the Murdochs. And so now Facebook's going to have to pay, essentially, Rupert Murdoch money every time anyone puts a link to any news publication in Facebook. And so Facebook, as a response, didn't really say too much, although they just banned anybody from being able to do that. And that cut half of the traffic 24 hours later to the news publications in Australia. Half their traffic disappeared instantly. And so Facebook didn't have to pay anything, because Facebook's like, no, we're not going to play that. We're going to remove the ability for anyone to post a link in Australia and Facebook. So there. And, there's been this strong tension between News Corp and Facebook, for sure. And by the way, don't forget, News Corp owned MySpace.
Thank you. That's what I was saying. You never know. MySpace might try to make a run.
No. I mean, Facebook came and killed MySpace, which Rupert paid a lot of money for.
No, that's what I mean. Is like I wouldn't be surprised that MySpace tries to make a run in the future.
So okay,
So the way
let's get
that
to.
story, the way the Australian story played out, is interesting because in the end, Facebook and Google. Remember, it was also Google that was involved in this Australian media debacle. And the way that story played out is that in the end, that was in February that the story broke. In March, both Facebook and Google signed a deal with some of the major publishing companies in Australia to pay them a certain percentage of the ad revenue. So it turned out that something like 75% of the ad revenue was going to both Facebook and Google. And what the Australians did is balance that, so that the publishers that were producing the content, and as much as we can hate the Murdoch press and all that, the important thing that there are hundreds of reporters running around looking for new stories, and sometimes the stories are pretty good, and sometimes they're pretty bad, but the important thing is that they are the generators of the content. It is that content that is making Facebook really very relevant in many instances in Australia. So that balancing act actually happened. And then it also turns out that this is actually nothing new. In both France and in Netherlands, Google and Facebook had similar deals with the publishing houses. So almost all of the publishing houses have this kind of deal, and a similar deal is beginning to emerge in India, where Facebook and Google and possibly even Twitter will begin to start pushing some of the ad revenues back to the original content creators.
So, but look, Australia is still a much smaller market, I suspect, without doing a bunch of deep dive investor analysis relative to Facebook's influence here in the U.S. So I think that it is intriguing that Fox News might be behind, or not Fox News, Murdoch. But I'm really more intrigued in what influence in Washington this would have, because I'm sure they make a lot more money stateside.
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, it's a fair question. So the other question is, how much more will Jeff Horowitz be able to get out of whoever's helping him get these internal documents and presentations that are very, very damning to Facebook's trust at a time when they're trying to push their global wallet digital currency? You can forget that. The timing's really bad. In fact, just to highlight how bad the timing is, David Marcus, who's the boss of Facebook Finance now, he used to run Facebook Messenger. Now that it's kind of smooth sailing over at Facebook Messenger, he's running the more important new thing, which is their new digital wallet currency for a global currency. And he even says, we have a trust issue and we deserve a second chance and blah, blah, blah. And now all these articles come out. Yeah, good luck with that. So,
Hey, Tyler, I actually just this is Ronnie. I just sent you a tweet. I don't know if you saw it. Jeff himself put it out 2 days ago.
yes. Yeah, that was
So
one
you
of the
mean
4.
Facebook?
Yeah. Facebook says its rules apply to all, and then there's this white list of VIP users. That was one of the 4 that in the past 4 days. The question is, how many days in a row will this continue for? Because he's on a roll. He's got an internal leaker who's sharing presentations that are meant for exclusively internal at Facebook that say this was yesterday's. Yesterday's was internally they're acknowledging they've seen results that they know that Instagram is causing serious problems for the mental health of young women on a scale that would make anybody embarrassed, and they've not done anything about it. Not only have they not done anything about it, they're lying to Congress about it when asked by Congress. Well, what are your products having? What kind of effects are your products having based on the research you've seen? And Mark Zuckerberg says with a straight face, "Oh yeah, it has a very positive impact." So it's
Well,
worse than doing
so Ty,
nothing. They're
yeah.
knowingly not doing anything to fix it and lying about it. So this is just go ahead, Vinay. Sorry.
Yeah, Horowitz tweeted about 2-3 days ago that he's been working on this Facebook for over 2 months, and there will be a lot coming. So this is not stuff he's finding yesterday to come out today, right? So he's written up probably about 5 to 7 stories, or maybe more, and he's going to drip feed them slowly over the next couple of days or weeks.
Ouch! 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 Ouch!
He should hire some security.
So he's trying to produce a lot of different outcomes, and I'm sure he probably will.
Let's see. Are his DMs open on his Twitter account? I'll find out right now. Jeff Horowitz. They are. Fantastic.
Well, of course they are.
Dear
I mean, he
Jeff.
wants information.
Someone sent him
I've,
a text. Did he
I've
put it in
already DM'd him
Clubhouse?
as well.
Wait, okay, can I ask a question? Is this grounds for Pulitzer? Maybe, you know.
Actually, Tyler, what's even more interesting is just check his description on his Twitter.
And
Oh yeah, we
covering
read it
the
out yesterday.
stories.
Inviting people from
Someone
Facebook.
ping him
Yeah.
into the
I'm
room with
pinging
his
him right
phone
now
number.
each day
Yep.
in
Copy paste the
Clubhouse,
link.
It's
just one click away.
Where we meet 2 times each day. Could you please?
Tweet at him publicly too. We can chime in.
Okay, I'm going to send this first to him privately DM, and then I'll do what you suggest, which is a public one, and then everyone can retweet it so he can see that.
That's how you get people's attention.
Yeah, Evan knows how to do Twitter, everybody. So, how do I tweet at him? But I'll respond. No. Reply to one of his tweets? No, he's got way too many responses to his tweets. This one. 11 minutes ago, he did one. I'll respond to his tweet he did 11 minutes ago. How's this?
Send him the link.
I did.
The room link.
Okay. And so if you go to Jeff Horowitz's... no, let me do it this way. I'm going to quote tweet his recent tweet. And it's now our most recent tweet.
Yes.
Okay, so our most recent tweet is the Dear Jeff. So could you please go to our Twitter account at TNATW, look at our most recent tweet, which starts with Dear Jeff, and retweet that.
Done.
Thank you. So that might, hopefully that'll get his attention. And then he'll pop in here because he just tweeted 11 minutes ago and 18 minutes ago.
Retweet and like.
Yeah.
That's the love button.
Okay. Thanks for that. Okay. So the next big article is from the BBC that Google's Grace Hooper transatlantic communications cable measuring communications cable across the Atlantic, measuring 4,350 miles and operational in 2022, has reached Bude in the UK and Bilbao in Spain. A new massive undersea transatlantic communications cable has been brought ashore on a beach in Cornwall and Bilbao, Spain, right by the Guggenheim Museum, no doubt, which beautiful part of the world over there near San Sebastian. My goodness, what a I could live there. And the food, holy shit, the tapas in San Sebastian, my God, that is one of the world's best food cities by far. More Michelin star restaurants. You could throw a rock and hit a 3-star Michelin chef there. Anyway, Grace Hooper transatlantic cable. It's what's interesting here, and it's not really mentioned, is just how Google is becoming the world's provider of transatlantic cables, international cabling. That near a huge percentage of these international cable of internet providing is now being done by Google and Facebook, most notably. And so what does that mean when a country says, hey, Google, when in the political battles between, a country and Google, like Russia keeps telling Google, hey, take down this content that we don't like. And by the way, put back that YouTube channel that's a friend of Vladimir Putin's that you took down, or else. And Google says, or else what, bitch? The cables that are bringing you this thing called the internet. Do you enjoy having the internet? Would you? And then ironically, the penalty for not complying with Putin is they slow down your internet service. And I'm sure that
you call him Putin now? You Vladdy
Big Vladdy Daddy? Big Daddy Vladdy.
Yeah,
Putin. Yeah, I'll call him
that's what I
Putin.
came here for.
Yeah. So
yeah, okay.
So when the Kremlin says, listen, you either comply with what we're telling you, and this is YouTube, this is Google, this has literally happened, this is actually happening. Putin's telling Google, hey, you put back my friend's YouTube account, who's an oligarch, who's sanctioned by the U.S., so he's not allowed to do business with any American companies. That's why you removed him. Nevertheless, put him back, or we're going to slow down your internet service here in Russia. To which Google must be laughing a little bit, knowing that cable that you're, feel entitled to, slow down the service of is actually our cable. So who really has the power in this scenario? I would say it's Google at the end of the day has the power in terms of, we talk about how governments versus big tech. In this particular case, I think Google might have the upper hand. Anyway, so then that's why these Google Intersea cables and Facebook as well. And China's, we read a headline yesterday that China's realized they want to do a whole bunch of new internet sea cables, and America's saying no. And no one is allowed to cooperate with China with these cables because they can be used for espionage, just like nearly identical to Xiaomi with Xiaomi's 5G. I'm sorry, Huawei's 5G antennas, which America has told all of its allies, don't use them. They can be used for espionage. And the Netherlands found this out firsthand. They did have Huawei antennas, and they believed that they were being used for espionage. And so America said, we told you. And anyway, that this is all going down now, that this infrastructure, these cables, and antennas and 5G, that's what by the way, in some ways, I feel like that's what really kicked off this new tech Cold War that's brewing now between the U.S. and China was
we arrested that CFO of Huawei.
Correct.
Right?
Well, even before arresting her, it was just the realization that we were telling all of our allies, do not everyone needs 5G. We understand that, but do not buy your 5G from Huawei, which basically your only other real option is Ericsson out of Stockholm. So, and that was kind of the first strong move. That was when Trump was in office, and he was he got briefed obviously about the 5G rollout and how important it's going to be that people not adopt the Chinese one, and how they're likely to use it as a tool of kind of corporate espionage. So anyway, the next one is actually about Xiaomi. So Xiaomi unveils 11-inch iPad, or not iPad, it's Xiaomi, 11-inch Pad 5 tablet starting at €349, and updated Smart Band 6, which I imagine is a watch, for €55, and a Mi Smart Projector with Google Assistant. And that's pretty dope. A projector with Google Assistant.
Ooh.
Yeah, €599. Xiaomi has also launched a new tablet, Pad 5, and an NFC version of the Mi Smart Band 6 today, and also their flagship 11T series, including the 11T Pro, with 120-watt fast charging. Holy shit, that's fast charging. Claiming 100% full charge in 17 minutes, starting at $649. So half the price of the iPhone 11 or 13 Pro that was just announced 24 hours ago. So next one is the next article, popular article, is Apple in a first reported no CPU gains for the A15, likely because of the engineer exodus to companies like NVIDIA and Rivos. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Apple has been long held for having the best CPU cores for consumer workloads for years. They have by far the highest performance per clock and efficiency. And but
they were kind of deceptive about it, because they said, 20% increase compared to our competitors.
correct. I noticed that as well. I'm glad you called that
And I
out,
was like,
Evan.
that's weird.
Yes,
That's weird. So, yeah.
That's exactly right. For those of us who watch these annual Apple events and have a very keen memory of how they work, Evan and I, and I'm sure Chris and a lot of other people on stage know, traditionally, Apple always compares it to last year's benchmark. 20% faster than last year's phone, 30% faster than last year's iPad, 40%, better performance than last year's version or the last version. They've always, 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 without exception, always done it that way. This year, they did something totally different for the first time. Really, completely, uniquely, totally, remarkably different. They didn't do that, what they've done every year for a decade. They did something totally new they've never done before, which is 50% faster than our competitors. Well, that's not last year's model. How do we know how that compares to last year's model? We don't. So, Evan, can you corroborate the point I'm making there?
They have the same cores. I'm sorry, Evan.
No, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead. Basically,
Okay.
yeah, go
Same
ahead.
cores. It looks like the transistor count went up by 3 billion, but everything else is the same. It's 5 nanometer architecture. It's running A64 ARM instruction set. Ultimately, all of this comes from ARM. So Apple does have some hindrances on how fast they can move, because ARM is who's establishing the standards that they all use to build the chips.
Mm-hmm.
So looks like Apple's kind of come to the end of the road for that particular
Evan.
instruction set.
Huh?
Evan.
Yes, Evan. Yeah.
Evan, you're muted.
It's okay.
No, I was just going to add, I mean, they've also lost a lot of talent to some of the top. It's not all, technology. I mean, you get clever engineers who are doing, clever designs, and you lose some of that talent. Your designs aren't as good.
So check this out. Now, here's a little insider baseball thing that only the core geeks are familiar with. That for a very long time, there was a truce between the big tech companies that you don't poach talent from Apple, especially when Steve Jobs was there. He took that shit very personally. He personally would come scream in your face and do very nasty things, and people were very worried about poaching talent from Apple. And he, it's the legend has it, was the person who made the kind of truce amongst the big tech companies of not poaching each other's talent, because Steve was incredibly serious about his talent, and not if somebody poached one of his people, he would go ballistic. And so for the longest time, they didn't really do that, and that held in place for quite a long time until relatively recently. And now, my oh my, is there a whole bunch of talent moving from Facebook and Apple and Google and Tesla and you name it. Unprecedented. This is
On paper, it is about 33% faster. It's almost 16 billion operations versus 11.
Thanks for
I think
that.
if you look at the article, the analysis in there, it goes into detail why it's not architecturally better, although there are more transistors, etc.
Very cool.
Yeah,
But
the architecture's hit the end of the
Yeah,
road.
he
All
talks
you
about
have to
it.
do
He
is
talks
add more
about like it
more
went
chips.
from the last generation was 8% improvement, and the prior one was 15, and now it's like 0. I mean, net.
Tyler, I
Yes.
just watched the Xiaomi product launch, right?
Yes.
They actually flashed the slides that compared the 11T Pro,
Yes.
Xiaomi against iPhone
Yeah.
against Samsung,
Yes.
very clearly on
Yes.
the chart. They're not worried to disclose what exactly they're comparing.
Right, which I kind of like how Xiaomi. I like Xiaomi's
Very
style.
transparent.
Yes, they're like, listen, here we're going to break this real simple for you. Here's our phone next to the iPhone next to Samsung's phone. These are the 3 top selling smartphones, and here's how they rank. Side by side, which you got to admire their whether or not it's fully accurate. You got to admire their chutzpah in doing it that way. So, okay,
Speeds and feeds are not only what people are going to use. Speeds, feeds, and camera, though, right?
yeah,
So you make a lot of money. The developers make all their money on iOS. So,
But
but yeah,
Xiaomi's positioning is not too dissimilar from how Apple tried to differentiate itself from the PC, probably what 10, 15 years ago with their whole I'm a Mac and I'm a PC campaign. Surely they're the premium brand between, the PC or Windows operating platforms and, the Mac. But I think it was a really successful campaign based on, hey, aren't we better, cooler, faster, etc.
And they also, I just watched, right? They also have this Xiaomi Creator program that they actually collaborate with this academy called Sundance. I'm not so familiar, but
Sundance
yeah,
is a
actually
film
teaching.
festival, one of
Right,
one of the world's most important film festivals. Yeah, and
right,
so they've partnered
right.
with Sundance to about making films on the Xiaomi phone, and this was part of Apple's event yesterday, where they're showing about how the phones are getting so good now, the cameras are getting so good, the software is getting so good that it can simulate film like behaviors.
Cinematic.
Yeah, cinematic features. And so Xiaomi's partnered with Sundance about an academy that anyone can take. It's kind of like classes with Sundance on how to make films using the phone.
Yep, and Xiaomi call it Cinemagic.
They called it
the
Cinemagic. Yeah,
but the quality of photos or even film is all about the lighting, right? So you can only get so much lighting from the phone directly. So I'm sure they'll be a big part of that class.
yeah.
So it's just a key point as well. But Lakeisha brought up a really great point with regards to how Apple really, as they were struggling to try to stay to keep their 5% or whatever part of the market, 10% of the market they had with that iMac. A lot of that's why I got kind of my point about the speeds and feeds are not really the strongest anchor unless you are targeting those that can't afford a more expensive phone. It's these other attributes that are valuable, the different types of apps potentially, and things like that. So it will be interesting to see as a big, powerful third entrant comes in to see how the emotional attributes might be pulled away from Apple.
I'm curious, Cheryl, you might know, somebody more on the ground. What's the China market share for Xiaomi now for iPhone, for the phone? It's got to be pretty high, right? in China?
I have no idea, Carl. I don't know
Yeah,
China.
compared to, oh, no. But I'm just thinking like the market here, just to David's point, the market it's not the San Francisco, US. I mean, this is a global game now, even for iPhone, of course, right? And so Xiaomi is just like, that's a competitive price. You can 80/20 to Lakeisha's point on how you disrupt a market. You get 80-90% of the benefit, or 80% of the benefit for 50% of the price, or whatever. Some way you completely disrupt it. And I see in the UK they've started store openings as well, physical store openings, right? So that's just they're starting to hit
Yeah,
the
I'm just
markets in the way
amazed
that
by
Apple did.
the 11T Pro that I saw just now because also the audio sound quality, they actually collaborate with Dolby, right? And just now Renee is saying that Xiaomi has already won the market in India,
Yeah,
and iPhone
they're
only have 3% in India.
yeah. So Xiaomi is the leading smartphone maker in India in terms of market share.
I mean, there's the ecosystem too, right? So in these different markets, you don't have people surrounding themselves with three devices and the watch and this and that. So that is one of the differentiators here in the States, surely, and I suspect in Western Europe countries and things like that. So if they can kind of go out there, which I'm sure they will, they'll be exploring, throw in a few more devices, maybe a watch or something like that. Then
Yeah, car too. They're
more of
they're
a
going
land,
for anything that's
yeah.
connected to Internet of Things is Xiaomi, right? I think people from China will tell you that they're literally hitting every category.
Yeah. So, I have to say they do it quite remarkably well with all the IoT stuff that they do. The next one,
So sorry, Cal. Xiaomi is number 3 in China. I just checked
okay.
in terms of market share.
So cool. Thanks.
So the next,
Hey, Tyler,
yes.
it's Netta. I just wanted to let you know that I just got off the phone with Jeff Horowitz.
Oh, nice.
Um, I just I just gave him a call and I said, listen, I'm not affiliated with anyone because I didn't want him to think that there's going to be a conflict of interest. And he said he's going to check out the room and he's going to check it out and get back. He was literally in a TV studio about to get a TV interview. So for anyone that's in the U.S., I'm assuming he's probably going to be seen on Fox. So I think the story is just going to continue to get bigger.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So,
This room can really move the news. Jeez, look,
so
that was amazing.
yeah, the next one is from. Whoa! Wait a minute. What's happening here? Let's do a refresh here because they change as time goes on. Okay. There's the Apple one, Google's Cable, Xiaomi. Next up is from about coin or chain analysis. Africa's crypto market grew 1,200%, so 12x in value between July 2020 and so over the past 12 months. So it's growing. It's doubling every month. Holy shit, that's a lot. To reach 105 billion. Retail-sized transfers made up 7% of all volume. P2P platforms, the need for remittances to circumvent restrictions from banks and putting savings into crypto. Africa's clearly the booming, geography for crypto and stuff. And to that point, South Africa is now, the central bank there is trying to do a central bank digital currency. We've got news of that in the past 24 hours. And then the next article is from Bloomberg, from Max Chafkin, who's notable. It says a book excerpt examines Peter Thiel's support of Trump and partnership with Steve Bannon, libertarian ideology, battles with the IRS, and founding of Palantir. So it's a deep dive on Peter Thiel. In an exclusive excerpt of The Contrarian, a new biography, there's no other name for a biography for Peter. The disruption preaching power broker is revealed. So it's just a profile piece on Peter Thiel. And if you don't know who Peter Thiel is, you should if you are interested in tech. He's one of the absolute power players of tech. And he is a real contrarian. And but that generally serves him quite well. He was also one of the earliest investors in Facebook. And he's a remarkable mind in tech. Even though he...
And a Trump supporter.
Yes, but that's more, I would say, more than being a Trump supporter, he's a contrarian, which is why, if you know Peter's gestalt, that wasn't terribly a surprise. So that's kind of in character for him to do the opposite of what everyone else was doing, which was it seemed nobody was going to support Trump out of geeks in the geek domain, and so that's why it's not uncommon for him to do that. And he turned out to be right. Trump did win that election when nobody thought he had stood a chance, and so he will do, but he's not. Today he doesn't quite have much fondness for Trump. We should say that. So he kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. Anyway, next article here is from Protocol that the SEC charges App Annie with securities fraud, accusing it of engaging in deceptive practices and misrepresenting its data. App Annie will pay a $10 million settlement. And what's going on here is truly interesting. App Annie is a tool that app developers use to figure out how many people are downloading their app and how much money they're making and how much other apps are being downloaded in different categories and how much money they're making. And this whole ecosystem, and a huge percentage of apps use App Annie. And to use it, you have to give over the ability for it to track your downloads and your revenue. And it turns out they've been selling that data to Wall Street. And Wall Street investors are making bets on some companies on their actual real data. And that's like insider trading. That's highly illegal. That's why the SEC is now up their ass and finding them for engaging in deceptive practices. So it's quite an interesting revelation, that one.
That's a category killer if they're not able to. That's their whole, how do you say it in French, raison d'être or whatever.
Yeah.
Their
Yeah, no, I
existence is
agree.
to
If they
give the app developers insights into, not just find out what they're making, but to really do granular analysis competitively. So that's a bit, and there's other there's several companies that do that. So
Yeah, they were supposed to be obfuscating and depersonalizing the data, and according to the SEC, they're not. And that's where
so okay. So they're giving away the PII stuff.
I don't know.
They're just
I don't know the specifics, but the accusation from the SEC is that the traders know what companies they're trading directly. Like they know the app downloads, they know the revenue for, say, Evernote or some publicly traded company, and you've got their actual downloads and their actual revenue figures. You can trade it with information that you shouldn't really have access to, nor should anybody, and that gives you kind of an insider trading opportunity.
but that oh okay. So instead of the quarterly reporting
Right,
through Wall Street, you
right,
have the real time. Yeah, that's how
precisely.
the world. That's how the world works. Everybody,
Yeah,
in terms of that's what analytics are about, a real time data. So it took them how many years to figure that shit
I know.
out?
Right.
Good lord. Yeah.
So the next one is Unicode Consortium. Those are the people who put together all of the emojis and get Apple and Android and everybody on the same page with interoperability of their emojis. The Unicode Consortium launches version 14.0 with a total of 112 new emojis, including multiracial handshake. Oh boy, here we go. So how many different combinations can you have with somebody who was good at math if you've got 5 color shades on each side of the
That's
hand?
the whole new launch.
Yeah.
It's all multiracial handshake.
It's 2 to the 5.
It's 5 choose 2,
It's
as
2
we
to the
say.
5.
Yeah.
So 2, 10, 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64.
Today's the latest emoji list: saluting face, melting face, and heart hands. Like you make your hands into the shape of a heart, I guess. Yes, that is one. A whole bunch of new emojis to play with. 112 new emojis. We'll leave it at that.
By the way, I think it's Metcalfe's law: n times n minus 1/2.
In my math class, it was called 5 choose 2, and there's a formula for working that out.
The problem is you can have white as well. and black black. So usually it's like, you have 10 items. I know this because of my mom's Mongolian barbecue. We're trying to figure out how many millions of combinations you could get. But if you only have, you can only, the 2 to the n or whatever is when you have only one choice out of a whole set, and how many combinations can come out of that. And I don't know what this one is because you do have to factor in same race as well. So I think John's right.
Okay. So the next one's from Forbes, that collaborative graphic design app Canva raises $200 million at a $40 billion valuation. And their founders pledged to give away 30% of Canva to charitable causes, which even at today's value, it's 30% of 40 billion. That's a lot of, quite a few billion right there. So
Amazing.
that's $12 billion right there. So amazing. This,
CEOs like that need more promotion.
yeah.
This is some of the culture that we need to reinstill in tech.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a bookmark. The Packards helped start tech, but we need to promote and support these types of CEOs.
Yeah. But I think it's kind of an amazing success story for a deceptively simple product and a delight to use. I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't love using it. And I've been a Photoshop devotee since 3.0 or 2.0 in 2000 or 99. And now I've kind of switched all over to Canva myself. It's just a delight to use.
Well,
So
their story and how long it took them to raise money from Sand Hill Road is really good, and it's very typical for the non-traditional teams
yeah.
that go looking for money. And they, hats off, and thank God that they were able to be successful. It's a great story. Read up on it, everybody. It's really inspiring.
The next big one is Snapchat.
Hey Tyler, can
Yes.
I just call out a couple of minutes ago?
Yeah.
I can't believe the geekiness of our community here,
Mm-hmm.
right? We had different perspectives and debates about a mathematical equation on the permutations on something, and that is the beauty of this. People have just they're deeply geeky, and I just want to call that out. It's just so wonderful to listen to. And
And
when you come
open
back
to
to
be
yeah, when you
wrong.
come back to something like this, you have all these news items, you have everything, and then suddenly there's this kind of it's deeply authentic. It's deeply
There's
authentic
math,
where
right?
John, yeah, and
Suddenly
John
there's
comes up with an
math.
equation, and oh, I just love
Analytical.
it.
Yeah.
Just love it.
I
And then
gotta be honest with you. The only reason I stayed in Clubhouse was after discovering this room.
Well,
yeah,
that's
but I
kind.
think it's these special
Pretty much for
moments you
me
got to
too.
highlight because they happen spontaneously, right? So it shows the authenticity and the honesty of the people and just what people care about. And I just think that and then Chris kind of working out, well, I have to minus the white and the black. I think it's just humorous. I'm laughing out loud here to
It's just
myself, and
it's very
love it.
authentic,
It is.
genuine, right? Like
and then
no
it
one
and then it
wants to
moves
be right
strategic,
here.
right? And then it moves into deep views on geopolitical issues, and then he moves into we got business executives here, and then you got Aaron who's deep into finance. I mean, I just think this is so unique. It's like an oasis even within Clubhouse. So I just want to call it out. It's
Okay.
just like you see it.
Two
Yeah.
things come to mind. This is Nerdville, and this is the revenge of the nerds after 20 years.
And for the nerd revenge here, it's 5 of the same race handshakes, and then 5 times 4 divided by 2 times 1. So it's the number of things that you're drawing from the urn with non-replacement, and then divided by the number of permutations, assuming order doesn't matter. So the total would be 50.
I had a feeling Eli would know the answer to this.
And
It's
Carl,
Metcalf's.
Carl,
That's Metcalf's law.
Yeah.
and Carl, I think this is a good opportunity to do something that you wanted to do.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, that's good. That's spontaneous, I guess. But I
Yes,
just did.
one. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Listen, guys. One of the things I wanted to. We were in another room earlier, and I was just doing a little MBA room, and Cheryl and a bunch of people here jumped on, Cami, I think, and a whole bunch of people, and we were just discussing, and we're just talking about was kind of reflective. I was just in between meetings, and it was like one of my kind of give back things with the MBAs, and you kind of just, but because the friends kind of joined on, we started talking about tech news and stuff. And one of the things that I just wanted, I just wanted people to really appreciate, like, how passionate and what a great heart Tyler has, and the amount of effort he puts into this. Like the 6 months,
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
took
Yes,
like eight
Oh
weeks.
yes,
yes.
I took
yes,
seven
Whoa.
weeks
yes.
off, right? And
100%.
Applause.
I wanted us
Absolutely.
to,
For
like,
he's a jolly
literally,
good fellow.
I want,
For he's a
yes,
jolly good
yes.
Okay,
Good
wait,
fellow.
wait,
Hip
fellow.
wait,
hip
wait, wait.
He's a
hooray!
jolly good
Somebody
Wait,
can
Hooray!
mute
Hip
him.
hip
Tyler,
hooray.
tell
fellow.
us
Hip hip
more.
hooray.
Woo!
Well,
Wait, shut the
that was
mic.
really
Yay.
chaotic.
Awesome. You're
Go,
awesome.
Okay.
Seriously,
Tyler.
seriously chaotic. Can we all just give a massive clap as well, like on Clubhouse
Okay,
clap?
unmute
Massive.
yourself.
Yeah.
Smash your
Because
All right.
audio now.
Thank you, Cal.
Yay.
Okay. Very kind.
and
Does it
he's
sound good,
humble as
Tyler?
ever, but I just want to say there's something deeply authentic about a person like that, all right? And he's not doing it for anything other than, like, he gets something out of it,
Oh, I get a
and
lot out of
he
it.
enjoys it. Yeah,
And
of course he
he
does. But
swear
hey,
when he get
this
emotional.
is not time for you to talk, Tyler. This is
Yeah.
time for you to just take
Yeah.
the
Yeah. No, but
take the and
it's not as
yeah.
altruistic as maybe you might make it out to be, because I get a
No,
lot.
of course it is not. That's the philosophy room,
Yeah.
right? But there's
And
nothing
Tyler
altruistic,
wants
etc.
to talk.
Yeah. No, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I just
I feel very lucky to be able to get into a room and synthesize the news in this way. I mean, we're all winning. It's a win-win potluck. So we all bring our. Uh,
But Tyler, there's
Tyler,
the one thing that I want to say, which is that I am absolutely amazed at your sheer industriousness. I don't think any one of us actually has that kind of industrial fervor. Because for you to be on it for 7 days a week,
yeah.
for 8 hours
Six.
a day,
Yeah.
going through the news beforehand,
Yeah.
doing your prep,
Yeah.
it's
No,
extraordinary.
there
Sometimes
isn't.
even
I'll let you in on a secret. There's really isn't
unbelievable,
any prep, but
unbelievable.
yeah. So,
but
What?
Tyler,
yeah,
Tyler, I have
I
a
feel
question.
cheated.
yeah,
I have a
No,
question
he's
for
just telling you that he's a genius.
yeah,
I thought he was a
Hey,
bot.
natural.
yeah,
I thought you
Ty-
were a bot,
yeah,
dude.
Tyler.
yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
To whom were you talking about like this so many hours before Clubhouse?
No, that's the problem, and that's why this works. Is because
That's what I wanted to.
I'm living in a country where I'm living in a part of the world where I'm like the only English speaker. So, for years I've been here as the only native English speaker, and I'm keenly aware of what I get out of this is the ability to
Speak
have
English.
intellectually stimulating conversations in my native language.
Ah, that's good.
Yeah.
Why did you move there?
San Diego Ease.
Yeah.
Border Spanglish
Yeah. So
American
I'm keenly aware of what I'm getting out of this. I absolutely love it.
Why did you move to Thailand,
Mm,
Tyler?
yeah. That's we have
Family.
to do a whole side room on that. That's a whole long story. But
anyway. Thank
yes.
you, Tyler.
Well,
Just
I
wanted to
appreciate it,
just
Cal.
See you,
Thank you,
Thank
Tyler.
you,
Thank you.
Tyler.
Yeah,
Tyler.
thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Thanks,
so
everybody.
much.
Tyler.
Okay.
Thanks, Tyler.
Next one
Thanks.
is which one here? We did the blockchain.
Well, Tyler,
Yes. Oh,
I have news related to
Jeremiah.
everything.
Yes.
So all of those accolades that went to Tyler are well deserved. In fact, Clubhouse has paid attention to the importance of news. 15 minutes ago, it was announced that Clubhouse has made a new hire.
Well, it's not
The
me.
head of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the head of NPR Arts Desk, Nina Gregory, a friend of mine who was a early test flighter.
Mm-hmm.
She will
Oh, and
now
a friend
lead
of mine. Good.
She will lead Clubhouse as the first head of news and media publishers. Our little group here is going to have its own official executive at Clubhouse who we can interact with.
Nice.
And it's a wonderful executive, an old
What?
friend of mine. Yay.
Yeah, and NPR is about as good of anywhere you could. NPR is truly remarkable
The
outlet.
last bastion of rational news on in
Yeah.
the English speaking world.
CBC.
Yeah.
You're right.
CNBC and
Well,
They're up there
she,
BBC.
too. Yeah.
well, Tyler, she does leave an opening, but please don't go there because we need you here.
Yeah. No, but thank God it's somebody from NPR, and I guess it's not a huge surprise. It would be somebody from NPR, and
Eh,
Francine's comment
She's great.
gives an additional assurance that Clubhouse made a really smart hire there.
Oh yeah, and by the way, she's been in this room listening.
Oh, great.
I told her all
Oh,
about
great.
the group and the crew,
Good.
and she's been in here multiple times just observing us,
Oh,
just so
nice.
you all know.
Yeah. Well, that's not.
She may be here now.
That's
Is it observation? If you're listening, I think there's an
yes.
opportunity for a new word there.
Yeah.
Audiovation,
Yeah, there you go.
audioveration,
They call it eavesdropping. Yeah,
eavesdropping,
there it is.
Dropping.
app dropping.
Yes.
All right, back to you.
Thanks.
Audio emergence.
We did App Annie, we did the Canva, we did the emojis. The next one is Snapchat hires Jacqueline Boucheri, the Chief Online Safety Officer of Microsoft, to be the first global head of platform safety. The next one is Nintendo adds Bluetooth audio support for the Switch. Crypto wallet startup Abra raises $55 million, led by Ignia and Blockchain Capital to expand wealth management tools, bringing total funding to $85 million. And you might remember that I brought in the CEO founder of Abra here in the Clubhouse for an hour-long interview, and it was a brilliant interview, and he's totally brilliant. He's one of the smartest people in the crypto space, and even pre-crypto space. He goes all the way back to Netscape, where Mark Andreessen hired him at Netscape. He came from Goldman Sachs before that. He's just been doing fintech since a very long time before it was called fintech. And one of the most important players in fintech kind of generally. Totally brilliant. Abra is totally brilliant. And I'm just I'm always happy when I see smart people being announced in the fundraising rounds. So the next one, I can't believe this, is also even somebody who's even an actual personal friend. And this is from TechCrunch. Swedish caller ID and spam blocking service Truecaller seeks to raise 116 million in an IPO with the Nasdaq valuation at 3 billion. And huge congrats to Alan and Nami from Truecaller, who I've considered dear friends since they did their A round, and Kim and the other people on the team there. And what a sweetheart team, fantastic founders who are immigrants into the Swedish ecosystem. Like one of them's parents comes from Kurdistan, essentially, with Kurdic background. The other's Persian, and yet these two founders have built a tremendous unicorn out in our Stockholm ecosystem. And it took them a little while to hit the billion mark. They got really close. Like their last round, they got it's like an 850 million valuation, and they sat there for a while. And now they've blown way past that. And their market, they've entirely focused on India, even though they're a Swedish startup. And it's served them very well. So to Alan and Nami and Kim and Linda and everybody there, a huge congrats, and lovely, lovely people, and couldn't happen to a nicer team. The next one is Alex Engler at Tech Press Policy. Enrollment algorithms used by colleges intentionally reduce scholarships and may lead to crisis of student loan debt, college dropout, and racial inequity. As colleges look for any advantage in the fierce competition to enroll students, hundreds of institutions have turned to algorithms. And these enrollment algorithms are intentionally reducing scholarships, and it might lead to a crisis. So that's concerning. The next one's from Reuters, that Uber's CTO has resigned after only 1 year in the position. That's unusual. Amid tensions with Uber's CPO. So some stuff going down at Uber, and Uber was in the news yesterday about the Netherlands ruling that Uber drivers are to be considered employees and not independent contractors, and that's kind of a blow that they're going to have to deal with. and hopefully that doesn't turn into a series of dominoes in other countries, or Uber is going to be quite hurt by that.
Well, they'll be hurt, but if you're a big believer in the gig economy and they're skirting lots of employee benefit things that employees would get. The other side of the story is all I'm saying regarding the gig economy.
Yeah. Hold on one second. The tech engine clear. After 2 grand staff, here's the approach I suggest. Okay. If we wanted to be. Okay. Oh, wow. I just got an email of that we might be getting a ridiculously super VIP guest speaker, like one of the best Clubhouses ever had. Probably, maybe, yeah, not Elon Musk, but super VIP. So, and
Elon?
Man, you're a tease.
No,
Seriously.
no. I mean, those who follow us every day know who I'm talking about.
Jason? Elon?
No, that's not super VIP. So,
Did you say J Lo?
No, Jason
Jennifer
or
Lopez?
Okay,
Elon
let's just
Musk.
wait and see.
Those who follow every day know who it is, I think. So, yes. So the next one up is, we covered my buddies at Truecaller and the enrollment and CTO. Amazon offering UK Prime members access to Deliveroo Plus. It's free delivery service for 1 year on orders over £25. Amazon is offering its Prime members in the UK and Ireland access to Deliveroo Plus for 1 year, deepening its tie-up with the British company beyond its financial investment. And then the next one's quite interesting. From the Financial Times, Irish Data Commissioner launches a GDPR probe into TikTok over its handling of children's data and the transfer of user information to China. Irish regulator adds to scrutiny of video app that has drawn national security issues and concerns. And now they're investigating TikTok and how it deals with the data and if it's sending that data back to China or not, and if it's complying with GDPR. And this is a little ironic because the EU is upset with Ireland, this same individual who's now investigating TikTok, who, by the way, it's important to note, TikTok is in the process of opening up an EU headquarters in Dublin. And that's not a surprise because all the big tech companies open their EU headquarters in Dublin. And why do they do that? Well, they originally did that because Dublin was giving them the best tax rate by far. And so much so that the EU has now come back and said, you gave them way too much of a tax break. We have to fine them for this. And they have started to fine these big tech companies for avoiding all of these taxes that Ireland was giving them. And Ireland is also, it's been revealed yesterday, notably, the EU is trying to punish the big tech, American tech companies for their violations of GDPR. And Ireland's not pursuing those. And the EU saying, WTF, Ireland. These big tech companies are violating our European GDPR. And Ireland's like, yeah, but we like these big tech companies. They employ a whole lot of Irish people here in Dublin. And we invited them here. And we gave them nice tax discounts to come here. And they're our friends. So we don't want to punish them with your GDPR rules that we didn't make and we didn't agree to. So,
sorry, Tyler.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Vinay. If anybody's in the States has got CNBC on, Jeff Horowitz is on.
That's she was just on the phone with him, right? Nita was on the phone right before he went live.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He tweeted from the green room there saying the CNBC green room used to look a lot better.
So what's interesting is that Ireland is going after TikTok. So that's interesting because the EU's been telling them to go after the American tech companies, which they've not done, and now they're going after TikTok. TikTok has already had some recent troubles with GDPR and the EU and whatnot. And it's starting to get a little bit of investigation in the U.S. There's a couple senators suggesting that we need to do a reanalysis and deep dive into TikTok now that the CCP has taken one of the 3 board seats in TikTok. And Ireland, it says, a second inquiry will examine TikTok's alleged transfers of personal data to China. Companies can be fined up to 4% of their annual global revenues for GDPR breaches. The company has annual revenues of $34 billion. So what's quick math of 4% of $34 billion? It's about $15 billion, is it not? So, no, $1.5 billion. That would be nice. In 2020, and increases of 111% over the previous year. TikTok is in the process of opening the EU headquarters in Dublin. We've implemented extensive policies and controls to safeguard user data, TikTok says, but the investigations come as TikTok, which has soared in popularity among teenagers during the pandemic, break and lockdowns, battles national security and privacy concerns worldwide. Joe Biden's administration is reviewing former President Trump's efforts to ban the app as a threat to national security amid wider fears that the Chinese companies could share American citizens' data with Beijing for espionage purposes. TikTok has said it does not share American user data with the Chinese government. ByteDance held talks last year with several companies, including Microsoft and Oracle, over a potential sale of its U.S. operations in an effort to resolve its tensions with Washington. Separately, TikTok has been sued for several billion pounds for allegedly illegally collecting the personal information of millions of children in the UK and Europe. TikTok denied the claims, arguing that it has robust policies in place to protect all users and our teenage users in particular. The app has also faced child privacy complaints in the U.S. TikTok was fined $5.7 million in 2019 by the FTC for illegally collecting children's data, and just last month, TikTok was fined nearly about $1 million in Netherlands by the Dutch Data Protection Authority for violating the privacy of child users. So, what's going to happen in Ireland, and will they fault them for GDPR and for the 4% of their global revenues of $34 billion. Ouch. So we will see. So the next one is...
If I might, just one last little punctuation on that is
Yes.
the financial penalties are a effing joke that these big monster companies have to
True.
pay. So it's just, that's part of this, and I'll just, depends on the lens you want to use, but this, white collar, blue collar, and just corporate, just they get to basically just run and do what they want because there is no integration in their strategy, any kind of risk management with regards to penalties. So because
Let me
it's not even a
let me
hand
add to that.
slap, it's like
It's less than a hand slap because they negotiate them down. The history of these GDPR fines is that they've been really negotiating them down to basically like pennies, to really minor percentages of a corporate income. So these are just folded in as part of corporate strategy and risk, right? These are not deterrents at this stage.
I think when it comes to the whole GDPR stuff, I think what's really driving this, I think is super interesting, is the Austrian activist slash lawyer, I think it's Alexander Schrems, who is basically saying that all of the cloud operators who have headquarters in the US are basically not fit for purpose for the European market. And because of the how the US is basically saying that, well, if you have your headquarters here, we can basically use any of the European data and put a gag order for, say, Amazon when we get the data. So they can't tell any of the users that they just took the data. But that actually, the first legal what happened where there was a case where they were asking, I think that Tyler was talking about it. There was a case that was done in where I think it was Google who was supposed to pay a ton of money for him, or was it Facebook? I don't remember. But just like you said, the Irish they refused to execute the court what the judge basically said. So I think right now they're kind of going on another track to try to see if they can see if the U.S. companies, all these cloud companies, would try to if they can basically execute the judgment. But I think it's also interesting because what's the alternative if you can't use AWS, if you can't use Google Cloud, and if you can't use Azure, what's your alternatives? There are very, very few.
Yeah.
There are some, And also the stack that have been built are just so entwined into those services, so it's quite hard, very hard, to start doing some kind of a migration to a European cloud server or cloud service. But anyways, that's going to be interesting. It's happening like basically right now, all this stuff.
Cool. So the next one is near and dear to our Tech News Around the World hearts here. When an identity verification startup called Persona just raised $150 million at a $1.5 billion valuation, led by Peter Thiel and Founders Fund, and Index Ventures, and Katu, who is basically Facebook. So you've got a mix of Facebook money, Index, and Founders Fund, all very top firms, very Index, and yeah, some really smart and big, leading VC firms there in this round of 150 million at a 1.5 billion for a identity startup no one's ever heard of, which means then this is now about the fourth identity verification startup that we've seen get money fundraising lately. And Peter Thiel, as we know, is very politically connected. This to me is yet another potential hint that identity verification might be soon to become a very big thing, which is otherwise why are all of these identity verification startups getting funding? Those who join us every day know what I'm talking about. We've read similar headlines to this now 3 or 4 times in the past 2 weeks. So I didn't even know these identity verification startups existed, honestly, and they're already unicorns, which means they've got huge potential clients line. Well, in this case, this one called Persona already has clients including Robinhood, DoorDash, Square, and Coursera. And Robinhood and Square, yeah. So it's if they start working with and also Bond, which is Mary Meeker. So another really good investor there. So it says Persona works with clients such as Robinhood, DoorDash, Square, and Coursera to help them verify the identities of their customers and business partners. It has a range of offerings, including biometric selfie scans and the ability to verify the authenticity of government IDs. And they combine those two, and then they really know who you are. And there is a fast-growing market opportunity for identity verification. Founders Fund partner Napoleonata said in an interview, Persona's technology is useful for crypto businesses, online brokerages, and food delivery. When someone signs up for a new brokerage account, they have to verify that their identity is who they say they are. Persona's offerings are better, cheaper, and faster than the competition's, he says. Identity has always been an important category, said Persona Chief Executive Officer Rick Song. They need to know who people are has been around since the dawn of the internet. Song confirmed that the company's revenue now exceeds 10 million without providing further details, including a new round of financing. Persona's raised 217 million since it was founded in 2018. Okay, next one up is a company called Reliance. I'm sure it's pronounced Reliance, but it's spelled ridiculously. Reliance. Reliance AI, which builds tools to help companies comply with privacy laws at the code level, emerges from stealth with a 25 million Series A. And this is, you're going to see a whole boom of these startups because complying with data privacy rules like GDPR, and every country is going to have their own rules, and you as a tech startup do not have the resources to deal with adjusting everything on your code to be compliant with all of these countries that you're doing business in. So Reliance AI builds tools to help companies comply with these privacy laws at the code level. That's going to become critical for every company.
100%, Tyler. Privacy and security by design.
Yeah.
Privacy by design has been out, as a theme for over 10 years. But as you highlighted, companies can't do it. I mean, they're forging ahead, and that's not their primary focus, and then they find themselves into shit water later.
Yep.
Yeah. So I see companies doing this. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it goes back to that TikTok story. TikTok's in violation of GDPR, and if you need a solution that helps keep you compliant with every country and region. So
we need to professionalize the CTO role, where there's some level of certification or something to help improve the deployment grade of this deployment of the software that's being deployed.
But it's David. It's more cross discipline, cross functional than that. So there's CTO, CPO, CMO because they're all doing different things, right? So you're looking at, like, they have chief privacy officers. They all have that level who should be interacting with those functions. And now you have the CISOs, the security officers, who also are going to have to rein in all those different functions or work across them. But that's the big problem, is that products isn't the CEO, and so they are usually on the same level with the CMO, who wants data and wants it now and wants it everywhere. So
So at the bigger companies, yeah, it sounds like it's a multi-role kind of issue, but at the smaller companies, it would really help as well. But yeah, it's just time. It's just time to expect this next level of quality, because the cybersecurity holes, it's just enough of all that stuff. The consumers and users and companies who used all this software, they deserve better.
well, but companies won't do it until it makes business sense, which usually is dollars, right? So that's why the fines might push them there. And then, as you said, consumers is another vector for pushing them. But until it makes sense in their, you know, capitalist structure, that's when they'll
Well,
implement.
so I mean, to me, I think so I totally understand until you have the requirement. So maybe there's a regulatory body who can kind of just set something up to help cultivate just a better level of professionalism and deployment quality.
Right. So carrot and stick, and as we're saying, like, tie it back to the earlier GDPR comment, is that if the fines aren't beefy enough, then that's not going to be a driver, right? So that's a carrot, and then the stick would be something that cultivates it. Another stick would be the consumers saying, we're not going to use your stuff, but that's unlikely because most don't even understand this. And then as you, just as Tyler, this company that you called out, makes it easier for them, right? So you're another carrot, right? So there's just different vectors coming, or different options for them, and so this is good. We're moving in that direction for sure.
okay, next one, Bangalore-based gaming esports app called Mobile Premier League raises 150 million at a valuation of now 2.3 billion, making it India's second gaming unicorn and their newest unicorn, of course. And but interesting now to see the all the different categories where these unicorns are taking off now that the fintech layer is very stable and everyone can build on top of that. So more unicorns. So the next one, Smart News, a news aggregator app that shows users articles on the same topic with labels on their political bent, raises 230 million at a 2 billion valuation for a news aggregator app. Jesus Christ.
It's an amazing app. It uses AI to find your interests. It's smart, literally. No pun intended.
Yeah. The next one, a Dutch startup called SendCloud, which offers cloud-based tools for retailers to manage shipping services, hence the name SendCloud, raises 177 million from SoftBank. Berlin-based online language learning company Babbel, great name for a learning company, or language learning company, seeks to raise as much as about $400 million in a Frankfurt IPO. And what else on the fundraising front? A online classified marketplace called Carousel raises 100 million at a 1.1 billion valuation in Singapore, becoming Singapore's latest unicorn. And what else is there? The Financial Times has this one, which is an overview of Amazon's plans to expand into healthcare in a huge way. All of it. They want all of it. They want to. America's healthcare is broken. They want to fix it. They want to take it over. They want there to be no healthcare, or what's called Amazon Care. And they're planning for tens of millions. They already have 1 million employees who are using it. They're going to expand that out until they're going to make a better offering than anyone else in America can do and they're going to get every American on Amazon Care. That's just how Amazon works. They're going to be able to outmaneuver better data, better analysis, better sensors, better. They already have the cloud hosting. They already own
Yeah,
AWS.
but Tyler, if they
Yep.
can remove all that middle fluff administrative graph and bring healthcare into reasonable, so people can actually afford it or offer reasonable solutions, I think it's fabulous if that's what they
It
do.
could be. I mean, this is who would have thought this 3 years ago? Like, America's healthcare is so screwed up. Let
Me, I
Amazon
would
fix
have
it. You know,
I would have because they bought PillPack. They bought my mail order pharmacy. And when they bought it, and it was an extremely innovative company with excellent customer service, and by the way, still is because they've been letting it operate. As soon as they bought it, I was like, oh shit, here they come.
they are not screwing around. Yeah, because they have the delivery. They're now going to have the stores. They have the autonomous delivery. They've got the cloud. They've got, the now they're doing the telepresence on both medical calls and mental health for their employees, and they have sensors. They've got Alexa in your house. They can leverage all these things that their competitors don't have, and it's going to be an unfair fight, and they're going to win. So the next,
Tyler,
yes,
Tyler, just one opposing view.
yes,
Don't they have too much? Because what you need is trust in healthcare.
yes,
And if you have all the data, all the history of purchasements from Amazon showing all your weaknesses and your biographical data, would you really trust them? That's a big question, I think.
yeah. They just need to be.
No, I'd say yes.
They
You've already given them that data. You've already given them that
Yeah.
data. Why, if they use it for another purpose? I mean, every time you give Amazon data, shopping, anything else, you should assume it's going to be used again for anything out there. And so, actually, they might be a better custodian of your data than the current healthcare system. You're right that there's a big data issue, and they will be crossing all of that. But when you
So speaking of data, the
Yeah,
next
but
story,
isn't it about insurance?
yeah,
Isn't it about
it
insurance? And
is.
so it's a trade off at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next one
Thank you.
is also totally relevant, and we talked about this one earlier when we met 9 hours ago in our previous meeting. It's about the investigation into the Minneapolis school district's use of a company called Gaggle during the pandemic shows how moderators subject students to relentless digital surveillance. And what it is the Minneapolis school district is using this app called Gaggle, which they're also using Google for the students for Google Docs and Google Chat, whatever they call their latest version of their chat app, and Gmail. And Gaggle is a surveillance tool. The student adds it, or the administrator adds it in, and it gets access to all of the Google Docs and email and chat and whatnot. And then it sends reports to the administrators saying, hey, this student is looking at porn. Hey, this student just mentioned something about suicide. Hey, this student went to a website they shouldn't. Hey, they said something you should be noted of. And my goodness, they even say in this article that one student was suicidal and the administrator called the parents late at night and warned them, and a whole bunch of students are looking at porn and all kinds of interesting stuff. And what are we to make of the idea of, school age kids having their data monitored around the clock? So it's a really interesting concept. That how do the students feel about this? Are they even aware? Do they know? And if they do, does it change their behavior? How will they develop? So we had somebody in the audience who's truly brilliant on this category. Like she's a true expert in this area, and she jumped in with a point that I remember having my mind blown, but I'm having difficulty reminding the essence of what her point was. Although I can find it. It was, her name was Mary, I recall. And here it is. Her name was Sarah, Dr. Sarah Meg Davis. My question, what does Gaggle do with the data once the kids graduated? Will it be deleted? Nothing mentions it in the contract with the school company, and this gets really interesting because in the age of cancel culture, where the host of Jeopardy, gets canceled even before he gets approved and then canceled before the show even starts because it was found out he mentioned the word boobies, in an email back in 1985. So what happens with these kids when they run for political office 30 years from now and they watched a porn website when they were 13 years old? The
right to be forgotten, Tyler. The
I know.
right to be forgotten.
So, but right.
No, you won't be
But you know
forgotten.
what?
You won't.
That right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell the court of public opinion that the right to be forgotten might apply in an actual legal court, but it doesn't apply to the court of public opinion, which is
Well,
that's what.
Tyler, this is less public. So this stuff, these whether it's actually pragmatically enforced, but for schools to get this kind of access to minors, the parents have to have consented, and they should have a lot of controls on the platform so that data isn't used basically like just randomly publicly later. But kids using social media goes to what you're saying. The this is more like the what was that God, Nirvana, was it the baby where the parents gave permission later? I mean, you never know where your photos are going to end up or your comments are going to end up later. But these school apps, and I've worked on some, are usually pretty heavily regulated requirements, but whether they actually follow through on them is
Yeah.
questionable.
So what Jennifer's saying, just wanted to jump in here. With Schoology and stuff, we had experience with this. There are many, many state and national regulations around this. FERPA, FERPA is worth looking into. There are a few others at a state level, but it's sort of like HIPAA. But so all the child's information can only be shared in the in the appropriate manner based on that regulation. So wanting to make sure that they can't sell that information to Google and others unless Google has a BAA with the school already, a business associate agreement with the school already to have access to that data, and even they then have to follow FERPA in terms of not using that information inappropriately. Just wanted to
Right,
add that.
What about
right.
using the
But whether the
information for
schools,
when they apply to colleges? Is that something that a school would share?
So a school can. So there's actually ACT got into trouble with NCCQA, if you guys know that company, because and ACT, the test prep company or testing company, actually bought this company called NCCQA, which had all of this information under FERPA. Cue the music, I guess. But so it got really, really difficult because what they did was ACT would then provide this information with NCCQA, which was collecting like all the notes from the consultants or the counselors, sorry, at school, and figuring out who is actually a good fit or not based on personality assessments and all this other stuff, and combine that with ACT, and then schools were buying it to select the right candidates and so on. And actually, more importantly than selection, um, attract candidates to schools that maybe were not as highly ranked because they were quote unquote a better personality fit, but essentially use it to sell to kids to go to a certain school that may or may not be accredited and so on. So there were a lot of issues associated with it, but yes, can they share it within the ed tech system if everybody's got FERPA? It's sort of like with healthcare, right? Like right now, people don't know this, but most of your data is being sold to other insurance companies and other things already. They're just being sold, quote unquote, de-identified. But we've talked about how it gets re-identified. That is much, much easier, even in ed tech. And so, just wanted to I don't know if I answered your question directly, John, but yes, the answer is sure it could be, but it has to be done while meeting FERPA regulations.
Yep. Thanks, Doctor.
Okay, so real quickly here, the next one is Microsoft fix over 80 vulnerabilities, including 20 Chromium security bugs in their browser and a critical zero-day vulnerability. Yet again, your daily reminder that Microsoft security, you are not secure. And the next one, Comcast partners with TV manufacturer Hisense to sell 2 smart TVs under a brand name X-Class. Apple's releasing the iOS 15 operating system and iPad operating system 15 on Monday, September 20th, with updates to FaceTime notifications and more. And those are your biggest headlines today, Wednesday, September 15th. However, those are not the interesting headlines that we've been patiently waiting for. These are just the popular ones that your cousins and coworkers are sharing with each other. And now we get into the fun ones that everyone has been tweeting. Like Jeremiah sent in this one about Clubhouse has hired a NPR vet as head of news, and where it says the live audio app Clubhouse boomed during the early months of the pandemic as people craved social connections and entertainment while spending most of their time isolated inside. Felicia Wellington Riddell joined the app last December, and that same day tweeted, listening to people talk about Spider-Man for the past hour in Clubhouse while I work on something. Isn't this heaven? But her fascination was not for personal reasons. As a senior engagement editor at USA Today who focuses on diversity and inclusion, Wellington Riddell saw a potential for her colleagues to host conversations on Clubhouse, the app, which was invite only when it launched. And USA Today has been one of the many newsrooms to have experimented with Clubhouse over the past year. And yeah, so now they've got somebody now from NPR as the head of news. Very cool. The next one, Jeff Horowitz. Keep an eye out for Jeff Horowitz if he joins the room. That maybe his CNBC session might have concluded, and he might be popping in here. And he's the journalist at the Wall Street Journal who's writing this series of damning takedowns on Facebook 4 days in a row now. So, following him, and we tweeted at him, and Netta on stage called him right before he went live on CNBC minutes ago. So the next one, somebody sent in from Reuters. It's on the ground video footage in China at China's Evergrande HQ, where investors are basically forming a mob, and they want to beat the shit out of Evergrande because $300 billion is about to go up in smoke of investor money. They're calling it a controlled collapse. And it says China's major banks now have been notified by the housing authority that Evergrande Group won't be paying its loan interest due September 20th. So now the banks have to be careful because they're going to have less money than they're expecting to have on September 20th. A media report says, underlying the broadening impact of the property developers' liquidity crisis. And this $300 billion that's likely to be kind of go up in smoke is more than was lost by the bank's total in the American housing crisis of 2008. So just to put it into kind of relative terms, just to give you a sense of this one company. And Evergrande isn't the only company that was a victim of these new policies aimed at lowering the cost of housing, which is aimed at fixing the declining birth rate, because people are not going to have more kids until they can have more houses. It's this whole big issue of being able to get a house in the city close to the schools, the good schools. And as one person on the ground in China, I think, perfectly summarized it, is there essentially the tightrope that is the political and economic tightrope that China is trying to balance at the moment is lowering the price of housing during a housing bubble, because the cities basically control the land sales, and that's how they make money, and they want to keep continuing increasing the price as the local region or city or district or pick what county, whatever you want to call it, and province, as they would say in that part of the world. And yet the central government wants to lower. And so, as one person went viral on Twitter by essentially saying, how can you make the price of a sandwich go down while the price of bread is still going up? Perfectly summarizing the paradox. The price of the bread is going up. That's the price of the land, and that's the local land office that's how they make their money. The local provinces make their money by increasing the price of the land that they then, give out. And then the central government wants to reduce the price of sandwiches so that people can eat. or so that they can have more sandwiches to feed more kids to fix the declining birth rate. Now you see the essence of the problem.
In Mexico, they've been, subsidizing, rice and beans, seriously, to keep the revolt at bay for a long time. So there's
we America's subsidizing the gasoline.
all gas. Oh, thank you, Tyler. Thanks, Tyler. Absolutely. Sorry. As a greenie, as a green bee, I really appreciate that. Thanks.
I mean,
And also, I think I heard from Chinese individuals saying that there are these individual managers of commission in these areas are giving out free oil, cooking oil, and all these other stuff to keep the populace supported, I think.
so I tweeted out the video from Reuters of this mob in the lobby of Evergrande, demanding the heads of the representatives, and they're going past the barriers right to the elevators, and they're not. It's a lot of very stern finger wavings in the faces of Evergrande team members there. The next one is OpenSea, which is an NFT platform, confirms executives. Oh boy, OpenSea confirms executive used insider knowledge when buying NFTs. The NFT marketplace has acknowledged that the head of product, Nate Chastain, purchased NFTs that he knew were going to be displayed very prominently in their marketplace. It's an auction.
Boy.
Yeah, this is Nate. Mr. Chastain, you just embarrassed your family name and your forefathers and your future generations. The world will forever associate Chastain with a super shady, greedy fucker that you are, Nate. You really fucked up.
And you're fired.
And you might spend time in jail. Because
yeah, is he like, how unintelligent can he be to have done that? Is he young or something? I mean, that's absurd.
Greedy. Anyway, I mean, yeah, that we generally associate that with youthful stupidity. But Justine,
Tyler,
yes,
I just saw a tweet from CoffeeZilla.
Yes,
that he just say heads up to the next OpenSea head of product after this new one is fired. If you're gonna launder money between accounts, at least make it hard to track. Video soon, he said.
Oh,
So
I love it. So CoffeeZilla, I consider a buddy, and he does takedowns on shady actors like this, and people who, especially now, he's getting more interested in the blockchain. His YouTube channel is fantastic. I can ping him in because I know we follow each other here in Clubhouse.
So the guys that were breaking this down last night, sorry to interrupt, the guys that were breaking this down last night in Clubhouse, it turned into such a war room on Clubhouse. There was about 40 people that were discussing over the problems behind it. It turned into a discussion between people how bad actors ruin the space. And in the one by Twitter, I forget, Twitter Spaces, that had hundreds of people going over it. It was a huge, very violent conversation between people. It was really bad.
Hey, Tyler, this is Ken. Can I just say, about a week or two ago on Clubhouse, there was a room just on open seas, and the issue then wasn't insider trading. The issue then was people who were owed royalties weren't getting paid royalties, and they were getting all sorts of excuses that we have a new system and this and that. And I was listening to that and said it had reminiscence to me of some of the stuff that happened with online poker, a decade ago, where money disappeared, and stuff like that, where and so but people weren't believing it, and people were actually believing, oh, it's because the system, he'll get it figured out and whatever. So I just want to say there was another issue, which is this royalty issue, and I don't know if that's been resolved, because apparently people have been owed royalties for weeks or months.
I just pinged in Coffee's.
I mean, aren't there reasons for the high gas fees on OpenSea so that you can support the self-executing smart contracts? So something like that should never happen in the first place.
I just want to quickly summarize for the non-crypto folks. Basically, it's an auction, and he knew which products were going to be announced to the public that were going to be going on auction. So he was able to buy a piece, and you can buy fractional ownership in these things, essentially. He can participate in the auction before anyone else knew the auction was going to happen, so he's doing it at a much reduced price.
In the stock market, we call that front running.
Yes. So it was.
So I was referring to the royalties, not the
Yeah.
auction placement.
Yeah, but it's they made a statement saying, yesterday we learned that one of our employees purchased items that they knew were set to display on our front page before they appeared there publicly. This is incredibly disappointing. We want to make clear this behavior does not represent our values as a team. We are taking this very seriously and conducting an immediate and thorough review of the incident so that we have a full understanding of the facts and additional steps we need to take. Okay.
Tyler,
yes.
Donna is in the audience.
Yeah, I just invited her up. So if and if you see CoffeeZilla, his username will be.
Yep, I will take a look.
Let me know because he's been doing some fantastic takedowns lately on people on his YouTube channel.
Tyler,
yeah,
this is Dakota.
Yes.
Hey, I've been following that community for since January, and it kind of evolved on Clubhouse and turning into OpenSea.
Yep.
And you know, I'm curious about the people, not necessarily the OpenSea employees that were doing that, but what about, you know, maybe influencers that were given small equities and things like that that were able to, you know, pump massive communities and really wealth, you know, 10,000.
Great question.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just curious from your guys' auction experiences or how this would work traditionally. Yeah.
And no, I think slimy shit goes on.
Especially on Clubhouse.
For sure.
Don't forget, Andreessen Horowitz invests in OpenSea too.
I think that's the least slimy of the slimy shit that's going on in the. There's all kinds of crazy, shady shit going on. You know, when they've got their own exchanges, kind of unregulated exchanges, all kinds of crazy shit that can happen.
That's kind of what I was thinking. You know, coming from the cannabis industry, my business started in 2015, and there was so little regulation. You know, all of us were kind of operating Wild West, and we knew that we were compliant with the people that were walking around our trade show rooms and doing the right things. And I just kind of feel like that's what's happening in crypto right now. Like, but could there be an immediate crackdown? I suppose so. I wonder if it's one of those things. As far as living in the U.S., we're not going to go after punishing any bit of this because it's crypto. It's not regulated. It's like kind of similar to like what I was relating it to. There's no,
So in this article, it says how this was discovered that this Chastian did this. It says the accusation caused quite a stir on Twitter, with some users highlighting a tweet by Chastian on August 3rd, in which he appears to admit to snapping up an NFT from a collection by an artist, Arya Mularama, ahead of the public drop. I just wanted to get one of these before they all disappeared, to be honest. He wrote at the time. Others, and then the platform promoted it the next day. And then people were like, WTF? This guy who worked for you yesterday on Twitter was just saying he wanted to get one of these before they all disappeared, and now here you are pumping it on your front page. Others have turned to Etherscan to produce their own analysis of the movement of NFT-linked funds between wallets associated with Mr. Chastian. Chastian is the owner of CryptoPunk number 3501, which he purchased for 27 ETH, which was about $92,000 at today's price some 7 months ago, according to OpenSea data. Since this NFT identified his Ethereum address, it was relatively simple for observers to watch his transactions and know that he was behind them. Both Chastian and OpenSea were contacted for comment, but did not respond by press time. The block will update the story if it receives a response, which they haven't, because they won't, because that's how it works these days. So the next one is, we mentioned the new gaming unicorn out of India, and we mentioned Amazon and Deliveroo partnering up. Southeast Asia's e-commerce platforms lure shoppers with celebrities. War of the Stars, basically. K-pop bands BTS and Blackpink and actors Hyun Bin and Jackie Chan will likely attract many shoppers to Southeast Asia's leading e-commerce platforms, like Lazada and Tokopedia.
Shopee.
Yes. So they're starting to use celebrities to endorsements, and they're going to be giving them some equity, no doubt, if they're smart. Israel is working on a system to conduct genetic scanning for all those who arrive at their borders. in order to better identify travelers infected with COVID. Prime Minister Bennett says Israel to genetically scan all arrivals. No details of the program immediately available. Prime Minister says patience running out for unvaccinated, and cabinet backs proposal. And what are they going to do with that genetic scanning? Couple of key words there of genetic scanning at borders. By the way, there was another country in the Middle East that's even said transparently, we want to do genetic scanning of everybody. And I have a hint for you. I happen to know another country in Southeast Asia that wants to do genetic scanning of everybody at their borders. This is a thing. Governments have realized the power. Oh, by the way, the New York Times is reporting, and they're not the only ones, but I'm just throwing out the most reputable name first. The New York Times reports that China's doing a genetic database of everybody they can get their hands on. That's the New York Times's take on China doing building a genetic database. Countries have figured out the power and importance of data, especially data about people and DNA data. And so countries are going to build DNA databases, and they're not really talking about it because they don't really want you to know about it. So get ready. There's going to be all kinds of interesting.
The genomics information technology revolution is happening much faster than I think most people realize. And the next generation of sensors, in some instances, preliminary results suggest that you're able to gather some sort of genetic material with something as innocuous as a fingerprint scan. So the technology is becoming almost passive and not really invasive. So I think it's going to eventually be at every airport. That's one way that we can prepare for the next pandemic, but it also has a lot of security and privacy concerns, obviously.
Was Charles
Eric,
in the
I
room?
have a
He
question.
works on
Yeah,
this.
sorry. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, go ahead. I don't think Charles
He's
is
not
here.
in the room. No, go ahead, Cal.
Eric, I had a quick question on that because it seems like you know this stuff based on your bio there, right? You kind of so I just so how do protocols and data standards work for this kind of data? Is it the same as other things? Like, so how is the how easy is it for this data to be understood by, let's say, another country, another party, another body? Is that just the technical part of that? If you don't know, that's fine. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I can answer the question. I've done a lot of interoperability work and actually co-led some of that work for the Global Alliance of Genomics and Health, and there are over 30 different ways of representing genomic data. But suffice it to say that there's a handful of really popular ones, and that shouldn't be a big problem.
The intercurrent conversion should be trivial.
Yeah, the larger problem is actually the legal implications between different regions. So how we may choose to store and interact with genomics data, like the UK, one of the programs that I was involved with, when they were investigating Wellcome Trust, tried to see if there was a way to look at genomics data without actually exposing the particular sequences to anyone. So was there any way to do kind of a blind test in that way? And it was actually a very difficult problem creatively, although I suspect there are a lot of cases where the Europeans will set the standard and they will probably have the most largest penalties, and that will set the global stage, I think, for data handling. Although each country, once you're in there, you're kind of at their mercy anyways.
Yeah, both homomorphic encryption and multi-party authentication protocols can allow you to operate on data without seeing the data, and that would be one way of doing it. The problem, at least with homomorphic encryption, is that everybody has to conform to the same data representation standards, so that when you operate on the data, you're operating on normalized data across a single ontology. So it's doable, but getting people to agree on a single representation so that you can operate on it without seeing it is the trick.
Yeah, and the largest actors, Israel, China, Russia even, and the US, of course, with its Five Eyes partners, they represent kind of the cutting edge at the genomics information technology forefront. And it'll be interesting to see how each country progresses with their legislation, as well as how their particular societies respond. Because, for example, like Estonia, having a national genomic sequencing program, the health benefits are immediately clear. Although in some places like America, where personal liberty is a lot more prominent and personal security of information is very important in places like Europe, it's not clear to me whether we're all going to get along. So it's just going to be very difficult. And famously, the Marvel CEO had a spout with a talent scout um, in the Mar-a-Lago resort, and they actually ended up lifting his DNA off of a cup to show that it was him who wrote out these very harmful kind of defamatory letters about this person moving into their community. And then the court in Florida, I believe, said that collecting that kind of data was not legal, but once you leave it in a public space, it becomes personal property or private property.
Oh
So
snap!
it's very difficult. So he got caught. I'll send you that story.
I guess
But yeah,
they have to rule that way because in a crime scene they have to. That's usually the scenario under which DNA data is collected and used in court cases. So if it was made,
yeah,
yeah, so they have to say, of course you can use that. That data is submissible, and of course that person's attorney said, Your Honor, that you can't use that data. My client was gone, blah 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 blah, and the courts are like, wait a minute, every crime we solve these days based on a similar scenario. So
yeah, and something
And
as
you
passive
are
as a
correct.
Sorry,
Go
and
ahead.
something as passive as a fingerprint scanner doesn't need to have access to that physical uh, property in that case. It can actually just do it passively through a sensor underneath the screen, for example. And that's kind of one of the technologies that my company works on. And we see it actually happening within the next 18 months to maybe 5 years.
hold on. So Amazon is now, we've read headlines even yesterday that Amazon has this thing called Amazon One, which is a palm scanning, full palm scan. And they've now decided they are now putting it in two, they own a supermarket chain called Whole Foods, and they're going to use it in Whole Foods. They also announced yesterday they're testing it with now concert venues, notably in the Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado, and people will use it as their ticket to enter the venue. Are you telling me they could conceivably get your DNA from your palm print?
Not the palm print. It's when you put your finger over the area that looks like a fingerprint scanner.
Right.
There can be a microwave level scanner that can get enough information that can uniquely profile you, and how close we can get to actually extracting that sequence information, I think, is just an engineering problem at this point. I don't even think it's a theoretical question anymore.
And remember, Tyler, Apple's got a patent on the palm rest on the Macs to do a lot of biofeedback and biosensing.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if because Amazon, we already raised the question about how Amazon's going so big into health and health tech and health data, and of course they would love to get everybody's DNA if they could, and if they could somehow use Amazon One, the palm scanning, and somehow collect DNA off of that, that would be amazing.
Tyler,
Yeah,
I just DM you something.
Okay.
Japan has been doing genetic sequencing for COVID, so meaning to say they have mine as well.
Yeah.
I give them my saliva. Yeah.
Just lastly, just to finish
Tyler,
off, I think the Pixel 4 had a little sensor, microwave sensor, so the technology is actually already within the market.
Get the
Particular
fuck out of here!
applications
Wait,
just require.
wait! Hang on, hold
The
the
Sony
fucking
sensor, the
phone,
little
Tyrone.
radar sensor, is not.
Wait! Are you telling me Google can get genetic information off from Pixel users off of their fingerprint on the phone?
The sensor technology, which is in the microwave range, has the potential in terms of an application to allow that level of extraction. So the sensor is there. It's just a matter of matching the database.
so would that mean that governments can take it when when you go to a country and you have to give your fingerprint that they could access? So every country will have every person's genetic when they go through their border control.
Yeah, exactly. The current generation of sensors are able to look at your glucose levels in your bloodstream just by having your finger over such a sensor. And so if we're able to isolate for glucose, that's just a resonance problem, and therefore that's a database or library building problem.
So I can comment on this. This was actually microwave signatures from DNA was something that I was talking to somebody about in the later 90s, actually closer to mid 90s. So it's one thing to have a signal that you can detect. And I might agree that you potentially could get unique signatures for every individual, though even that would probably be a challenge. But actual sequence information, you have to understand that there is so much else there, like the RNA transcriptome, that would be interfering with any signal that you're getting from nucleobases. And you don't, there is so much that you wouldn't know about to put into the equations that you would have to solve if this were even workable in terms of signal to noise ratios for actual sequence determination. I mean, I'd love to be proven wrong. I would be very interested, but I'm highly skeptical.
Yeah, that's what our team is working on in that direction. And so far, we've had very good results with even differentiating two strains of a virus. So we're able to do that. And of course, there are metabolic byproducts involved and so on. But the signal noise problem, I think, is just an engineering problem. I don't think it's a feasibility problem. And there was actually a paper last year from a team out of Iran, which you would think with all the sanctions, they would not be able to keep up with this kind of technology, but they actually had a kind of interesting model where they were looking at the resonances of oligonucleotide sequences and to see if there was any sort of signature there that was sufficiently unique to identify that sequence and extract the sequence information just from that. So like free floating kind of little strands of DNA, RNA could potentially be extractable or have their sequences extracted.
So that was where I was going to go to challenge you. You know, show me a sequence of one 16-mer oligonucleotide in a background of lambda DNA, bacteriophage lambda DNA, and then do that with a few different 16-mers. That would be impressive, and I think it would be a very formidable challenge.
Yep, it is.
So for me, as the kind of a futurist, this fast genetic sequencing, this fast DNA, is really the key to true end-to-end encryption. You know, you touch your device, it knows your DNA. Your DNA is the key for your data. I think this is really where it's going to push things. And I'll shut up.
Wild. Okay. Next one.
Hey, Tyler,
yes.
guess has just jumped on stage. An old friend. Jonathan.
Yes, welcome back, Jonathan. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, nice to see everybody.
You still
Thanks for having
flowing?
me on stage. You know it. I've got an event next week, so yeah, thought I would stop in and say hello to everybody,
Awesome.
check out the conversation, just like the old times.
Yeah. Welcome back. So we're just running through some headlines here. The next one is speaking about kind of interesting tech coming down the road. Time magazine, time.com, has a profile on Kai-Fu Lee. And Kai-Fu Lee is a leading figure in AI. He's the CEO of Sinovation Ventures, a VC, and is loves AI. And he's written a book. His next book, called AI 2041, 10 Visions for Our Future, will be published. Well, it was published yesterday, September 14th. And he gives an excerpt of his book to Time Magazine, and I won't read the whole excerpt. It's quite long, but I will read the last paragraph where he says, privacy of data is a major concern, particularly in the field of healthcare, but there is an emerging field called privacy computing that shows signs of promise. For example, federated learning is an AI technique that trains AIs across multiple decentralized devices of servers holding local data samples. It approximates centralized training while disallowing a central AI owner to see the data. And Google's using this as a replacement for cookies and whatnot. Another method known as homomorphic encryption encodes the data in a way the AI owner cannot decrypt. AI is trained directly on encrypted data. That doesn't work on deep learning yet, but future breakthroughs are possible. Finally, a trusted execution environment reads encrypted and protected data and decrypts the data for AI training on a chip in a way that guarantees that a decentralized data will never ever leave the chip. And I think Apple actually uses that. But the last paragraph continues. It says each of the technologies still has bottleneck and technical issues. I'm confident that by combining regulation, private sector mechanisms, and technology solutions, the AI-induced risks and vulnerabilities will be addressed in similar ways to every other technology tidal wave that we have experienced. AI in 2041 will be as challenging as it will be exciting. AIs will create efficient services that will give us back our most valuable resource, which is time. It will take over routine tasks and liberate us to do more stimulating or challenging jobs. Humans will work symbiotically with technology, with AI performing quantitative analysis, optimization, and routine work, while we humans contribute our creativity, strategy, and passion. Each human's productivity will be amplified, allowing us to realize our potential. We are the generation that will inherit the unprecedented wealth from AI, so we must all bear the responsibility of rewriting the social contract and reorienting our economies. But if we do, and if we begin to plan for a future now, AI will create unprecedented economic opportunities, save millions of lives, and push us into thinking more deeply about what really make us human. So just sharing that. And again, that's just the last paragraph because there was...
Hey, Tyler.
Yes.
Kai-Fu Lee's on Twitter. He's very open.
Yes.
Very friendly. I bet he would come on the show with just a DM or a tweet.
Yeah, I remember speaking at the same event with him, and I can't remember what event it was. I just remember being at the speaker dinner with him, and we sat next to each other at the speaker dinner. I just can't.
Yeah, he's pretty, I guess, personable. Actually, if you reach out to him, like I've reached out to him on Twitter as well, so interacted with him. He's very wants to keep his ear to the grindstone kind of thing, to always have a chance to talk about new and exciting things. And I think ever since he left Google, I think he's doing a lot of great work for China. So
yeah, and Todd just DM'd me to say he's working to do something with him in October. So the next one's from Karam, that the digital yuan goes head to head. Here it is. Told you. How many times did I tell you? I told you at least 10 times. Here now we have the article from Bloomberg. Headline reads, digital yuan goes head to head with Alipay and WeChat in Beijing. From Bloomberg. Let's read it. From Karam. Thank you, Karam. It says, banks, tech firms rush to put latest gadgets on show at fair. Winter Olympics to be a key test for the digital yuan popularity, which that's just 5 months away. Swipe your bracelet, watch or even a walking stick. Oh, swipe your bracelet, your watch, or even a walking stick. You can pay for your goods with the digital yuan. These are some of the quirky gadgets that the China's central bank lenders and technology giants are showcasing to Beijing residents ahead of the broader rollout of the e-currency when the city hosts the Winter Olympics in February. The wearable devices embedded with digital yuan chip can be tapped against a scanner, transferring the currency from an e-wallet without needing an internet connection. The People's Bank of China is rolling out all the stops to promote the e-currency to a population far more used to transacting on a daily basis using WeChat Pay or Alipay. The central bank has rolled out pilot programs in 11 cities and regions from Shenzhen to Hainan so far and has recruited major banks and technology firms to help get an otherwise indifferent population to make the switch to the digital e-yuan. Beijing consumers got their first taste of what the digital yuan future might look like during a service trade fair in the capital city last week, which attracted 36,000 visitors. Major banks like Industrial and Commercial Bank of China and China's Construction Bank, as well as tech firms like Alibaba's Ant Group, which is Alipay, had booths promoting the digital currency. Hao Zhuyi, a 45-year-old resident of the city, queued for 20 minutes at a booth run by Bank of China to sign up for the digital yuan account and get a cup of cappuccino for 1 cent of the digital currency. I've always wanted to try a digital yuan and experience how different it is from Alipay and WeChat Pay. After seeing it so much on TV, she said, as she waited in line for a cup of coffee, it's really easy to use, whether it's paying or topping up. Long queues formed at vending machines that take digital yuan to buy stamps, drinks, and Winter Olympic-themed souvenirs. A handful of shops, including a bookstore, dental clinic, and museum shop, set up booths to sell products that could be bought with digital yuan at the fair. Lee Jun, 36, who works in asset management and had spent 200 yuan in a free digital yuan handout in February, said he would prefer digital yuan, which is backed by the central bank, to WeChat Pay and Alipay when it's officially launched because he feels it's safer. At Ant Group's booth at the Beijing Fair, staff showed visitors how to open a digital yuan wallet through the Alipay app and to top up funds through it. E-commerce giant JD also showcased vending machines and self-service payment machines at its booth. Food delivery firm Meituan launched a promotion in 9 cities last week that gave out free digital yuan to users who register for shared bike rides. Bank officials at the fair said it's no easy job to promote the digital yuan as its use is still limited in real life, and many people still can't wrap their head around the concept of a virtual legal tender. But the upcoming Winter Olympics will be a key opportunity to popularize the digital yuan, not just among Chinese, but also foreign visitors. Oh boy, here it comes, not just for the Chinese, but for the visitors. It's going to be
Remember the old article that they said that the athletes will be given the card?
Oh, you did? As its use
several months ago.
Yeah. For the foreign visitors. At the Beijing Trade Fair, a staff member at Postal Savings Bank of China demonstrated an ATM-like machine that can take foreign currency notes and convert them into digital yuan stored in a card. China Construction Bank also had a similar machine that allows foreigners to apply for a digital yuan account with their passports and overseas mobile phone number. The bank showcased a subway turnstile that takes digital yuan by tapping their phone in the same way that Beijing commuters have used WeChat Pay and Alipay to pay for rides for years. Staff at the bank also demonstrated a walking stick mounted with a digital yuan chip that enables transactions by NFC, requiring no internet connection. The device is meant for elderly users who may not have access to smartphones, and the bank tested over 360,000 application scenarios and entered strategic partnerships with 60 banks. The bank is actively exploring innovative ways of digital yuan in banking, wealth management, investing, financing, as well as securities and asset trading. A spokesperson said, "We are building convenient payment and settlement methods around supply chain management, smart transportation, and wearable devices. Among the wearable products, credit card-like wallets have been used, according to the manager of technology and support. Another 30,000 card wallets will be distributed over the Winter Olympics. Consumers, merchants, and banks all agree that it's critical for the yuan to be used in more ways for it to become more popular. The Bank of China officials have said they won't use administrative measures to force people to adopt the digital yuan. People are already so used to WeChat and Alipay, so many are reluctant to get digital yuan all of a sudden, says 26-year-old staffer at the booth. Even though it's more convenient than those when you are using it because of its simpler and easier to use app interface design. So
George Orwell would be turning in his grave, Tyler.
Yes, indeed.
I'm curious as whether anybody here would even consider doing that. Would you? Anybody here get their passport and their and their ID and load it up and connect to the digital yuan? Would you not be in the slightest bit concerned about the privacy concerns of this?
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the reluctance of people there using it, and they're going to have to become a little more insistent that people use it, I think.
Hey, Tyler, I just wanted to add for the previous story, if anyone wanted to follow up, the name of the paper for the genomics sequencing that I alluded to is entitled A Mathematical Model for Vibration Behavior Analysis of DNA and Using a Resonant Frequency of DNA for Genome Engineering by Marvi and Gadiri. So, and if anyone has any questions, they can also reach out to me. But that's probably the place where I would start if anyone wanted to follow up with that crazy sounding story.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. The Anita sent in the next one from Wired that bike legend Greg LeMond, Tour de France legend Greg LeMond, and the amazing candy-colored Dream bike And the Tour Defense legend and anti-doping crusader is building an ultra-light e-bike that he hopes will be fun as hell to ride and jumpstart a U.S. carbon fiber e-bike. So tweeting that one out. And then Faraz sends in an update on our friends at Picasso, which is the fractional home ownership app. You guys remember the story about in the Sonoma wine country area where it was a story of some neighbors had bought a fractional ownership of a home and the neighbors freaked out, and that their community is being ruined by this app that's allowing fractional ownership of homes in a neighborhood. So Picasso, the prop tech startup founded by Xylo alumni, raises $125 million. So there you go.
Is this a SPAC thing, Tyler?
No.
Or is it like different to that?
It's totally different. They just raised $125 million, regular fundraising. The prop tech startup Picasso basically allows a home to be split into 8 pieces. So you could have 8 different owners of a house. And it's proving to be quite popular, but the neighbors hate it because they perceive that it's doing 2 things. It's raising property values, which some neighbors like, some don't. But more importantly, there's no true owner of the home. It becomes more like a timeshare. Although it's not a timeshare because they actually own it. It's not just, they're not owning the time, they're actually owning the company.
It's like land banking, right? Similar to land banking.
But it's being met with...
Because it gets more people in the area as well. It's like having lots of flats within houses, so i.e. more people, more stress on the services. Maybe that as well, or not?
I think neighborhoods just like the idea of having neighbors, consistent neighbors in the homes rather than fly-by.
We like knowing the people we don't wave to.
It makes it hard to gossip about your neighbor when they change every 2 months. So it's it's an interesting concept. The next one from Renjant sends this one in that Spotify launches an integrated mini Spotify player on Facebook for users in India. So you have your own little Spotify player built into Facebook. And then Lucecast sends in this one from the BBC that a record number of environmental activists have been murdered this year. More than 220 environmental and land rights activists were murdered last year. I think things are really heating up, no pun intended. And there's starting to be a lot of friction between...
That doesn't sound right, Tyler. I mean, not in the UK, 220... No, those numbers sound wrong. I'd need to verify those for sure.
Okay,
that's a lot of that's a lot of... I don't care who it is. We had Reuters talking about freaking Litecoin the other day.
Yeah.
It's absolute crap. So
dive into it.
Yeah, I would just put it. Yeah, I would. I'd just put a red flag.
I love that.
That's a lot of murders, Ben. Knowing how many freaking murders actually happen in the UK.
Go get them, Ben.
Yeah. This problem I'm not so invested in, but just my bullshit-ometer's firing off, and it may not be right.
That's why Jack Dorsey follows you, Ben. That's why he follows you, buddy.
Well, he doesn't anymore because I got too needy. I was like a needy kid messaging him too much, so he went away again.
So it says it's from the BBC. It says a record number of activists working to protect the environment and land rights were murdered last year, according to a report by a campaign group. 227 people were murdered around the world in 2020, the highest number record for a second.
Around the world. That's fine. Sorry, I thought you were saying in the UK.
No.
That's what didn't make sense.
Okay. The highest.
Actually, Tyler, I sent you a story a little bit related to this. I don't know if you've seen it or not come across it yet, but they were actually talking about a reality show that's coming out now that they were just completely just saying that it's probably the worst idea ever. Kind of like the Apprentice type, where these activists will go against each other and get their message across, and people will win through it. And it was just a disaster of a situation that can come up. I think I sent it to you. I'll double check.
Okay, thank you. So recorded for a second consecutive year. The report from Global Witness said almost a third of the murders were reportedly linked to resource exploitation, logging, mining, large-scale agribusiness, hydroelectric dams, and other infrastructure. The report called the victims environmental defenders, killed for protecting natural resources that need to be preserved, including forests, water supplies, and oceans. Since the Paris Agreement on Climate Change was signed in 2015, the organizations says on average 4 activists have been killed each week. It said this shocking figure was likely to be an underestimate because of the growing restrictions on journalists and other civic freedoms. Logging was the industry linked to the most murders, with 23 cases, with attacks in Brazil, Nicaragua, Peru, and Philippines. Indigenous people, most often on the front line of climate change, accounted for a further 1/3 of cases. Colombia had the highest recorded attacks, with 65 people killed last year. A senior campaigner for Global Witness, Chris Madden, called on governments to get serious about protecting defenders. He said companies must start putting people and planet before profit, or he warned that both climate breakdown and the killings would continue. This data set is another stark reminder that fighting the climate crisis carries an unbearable heavy burden for some who risk their lives to save the forests, rivers, and biosphere that are essential to counteract unsustainable global warming. This must stop. Okay.
And I think that this has been going on for decades too. Unfortunately, this is still an issue. Like Berta Caceres in Honduras, she was killed for opposing a dam. And same thing happens in Mexico, in Amazon, Brazil, in so many places. It still keeps going on. And unfortunately, it's a fight between the governments who want to push into these places and their counterparts, and also people trying to protect the land and making sure that the environmental aspects are sounded on. But even like people like in, I think in Mexico, there was a monarch butterfly area that was actually trying to be protected, and even those activists were stopped and killed, assassinated actually, apparently.
They're literally on the front line.
Yeah.
That we all are going to be joining them in our own different ways over the next
financially.
few years.
There's going to be eco militias. People are going to start funding these people, and they're going to get the funding will be used to defend themselves and get better equipped to actually win those battles that they're fighting on those front lines.
But those are the covert wars, though, right? Those are the covert wars we don't want. We want people to be coming out in the open and supporting things. I think this is a problem, right? We shouldn't be we should have these people, whoever has the money who's supporting it, should also be voicing it in public, because these people, even if you give them money, they're not going to be able to fight against people who are, determined to make a profit off some spot. Even farmers, right? They're being forced to, maybe because of poor practices, expand into the rainforest and stuff. And how do you actually stop a farmer who's like trying to feed their family? So it gets complicated unless like bigger leaders step up and say no. They can't. Sponsoring is one thing, but they have to stand up.
But there are militias for hire, Heyman. We use them in America pays them in the Middle East to do the dirty work that their army doesn't want to do.
And it's not just the government.
I highly recommend.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. Ladies first.
I was just going to say, sorry. I was just going to say I highly recommend for anyone that hadn't seen it, this documentary called Seaspiracy, SEA, as in conspiracy, but Seaspiracy. It was fascinating and very much related to this topic. If anyone hasn't seen it, I definitely say I saw it on Netflix, and I'm sure it's available.
Well, the documentarian starts getting himself in deep water, no pun intended, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's corporate interests as well. I just wanted to put that on the table. There's the government, and then there's the corporate interests as well. They're kind of involved in different types of ways.
And Heyman's right. There's big money in cutting down forests, and the bad actors are very highly funded folks. The problem is they're paying people to do the dirty work, the deforestation and whatnot. Those people who are being paid aren't really being paid that much. And if those people who are being paid to do the deforestation are being confronted by well-armed militias, then the natural result will be that the big companies, of course, will hire their own militias, and then you'll have literal hot militia combat on these. They'll turn into battlefronts, literal battlefronts.
So besides all of that, in the hopes of getting people to have a hard time sleeping tonight, I'll make the following statement, which is, seriously, there was an inflection point this summer where the Amazon forest, the scientists say, is now a contributor to the climate warming. So the vision that we've had for just kind of forever was, hey, these big, huge pockets, these huge forests are helping fight the battle. Because of the deforestation and things that have occurred, just remember that at 3 a.m, that the world you're going to wake up to tomorrow is fundamentally different. and it's due to all this greed and testosterone.
Hey, David.
Oh, sorry.
On that note, Ronnie Samuel in the audience just sent this one in. This is from BBC News just in the past couple hours. North and South Korea test ballistic missiles hours apart.
Yep, and the North Korean one landed in Japan Sea.
Ouch. North and South Korea have tested ballistic missiles hours apart from each other, highlighting an arms race on the peninsula as nuclear talks with the North remain stalled. The North fired 2 ballistic missiles across its east coast, its first test with such missiles in 6 months, and a fresh breach of UN resolutions. The test came as South Korea and China discussed the North's nuclear issues. Hours later, the South tested its first submarine-launched ballistic missile. The test of the missile, known as the SLBM, was pre-planned and not in reaction to the North's latest launches. It makes South Korea the 7th country in the world with such a technology. President Moon Jae-in, who attended the test, said South Korea now had sufficient deterrence to respond to North Korea's provocations at any time, urging the South to continue increasing its weapons programs to overwhelm North Korea's asymmetric power.
Junior needs money.
Okay, I'm sorry, Todd. When you're done, I'd like to.
The comments were criticized by Kim Yo-jong, sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who described them as illogical and regrettable, warning that they could lead to a breakdown in ties. State news agency KCNA reported in North Korea's test, the short-range missiles flew around 500 miles at a maximum altitude of 60 kilometers. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said they were launched from the Central Islands area of the country and flew east towards the Sea of Japan, also known as the EC. South Korea and the U.S. were conducting analysis to determine which type of missile was used. The Japanese defense minister said later the missiles had landed inside Japan's exclusive economic zone. So a little too close for comfort.
May I make a statement? It's. I hope you're cool with it, but let me just say it. Everybody keep your eye on the ball. The ball is the blue marble that we live on. These mankind distractions, as scary as they sound, the fear politics, the fear marketing, the quite frankly, the sincerely scary shit like that announcement, it represents. Keep your eye on the former story, because the green story, the green blue story, just try to please put more share of mind on it, because that's when that's the game over for everything. And I just simply, in closing, like to say I lost my dad a few months ago. I call him kind of one of the invisible heroes of the Cold War. I grew up in Vegas, and he spent decades helping with the testing of the nuclear bombs during the Cold War. And he, like thousands of others, got all these different cancers. And I'm just saying that because the nuclear stuff is scary shit. And if you're old enough, I'm not quite old enough to remember having the drills at school, but I personally felt it through my family. And I'm just saying, as scary as it is, the blue marble is just the story that keeps getting squeezed out. Tyler, I just wanted to share that because it is dramatic. But this is the kind of dynamic that happens in media. So I hope you're not upset with that.
Sure.
No, thank you, David, for reframing that.
Thank you.
It was plenty scary during the Reagan administration, just need to add.
Although the people who did have to stand in front of the nuclear blasts, I think famously there's a YouTube video about this where British sailors are talking about having to cover their faces with their hands, cover their eyes. And when the explosion went off and the light was coming towards them, they could actually see through their eyelids and see their bones and other things like that. So they were quite literally just projected with all this radiation. So it was, the early experiments we were the guinea pigs. So very, very tough stuff. Dark history.
So Damolaire, who is normally on stage, I think he's on stage, I think I heard him, sends in this one from... it says CRISPR, a guide to health revolution that will define the 21st century. And I realize we just read the one about how AI will change everything in the 21st century. And then, of course, we've got, that's not the only one. We've got this CRISPR. Scientists will soon have tools to rewrite the book of life and in doing so edit out sections that cause disease piece by piece. And this is by Science Focus, the home of BBC Science Focus magazine. So this is essentially the science magazine of BBC. And this says almost exactly what I tried to communicate when we met 10 hours ago, which no doubt Charles will recall my nearly verbatim wording of this. Scientists will soon have tools to rewrite the book of life and in doing so edit out the sections that cause disease piece by piece. But is the technology safe, and will all of us get the benefits, or will it be the pervasive or the preserve of those who can afford it? Scientists are a cautious bunch, fond of a caveat. Even when describing their own research, our favorite expressions are yes, but, and on the other hand, and it remains unclear, says gene editor Dr. Fyodor Urnov. So please add all of that to what I'm about to say. If CRISPR realizes 10% of what we practitioners of gene editing dream it to be able to do, it will rival the greatest advances in the history of biomedicine as a technology to impact public health. Urnov is talking via a crackly Zoom link from his office at the Innovative Genomics Institute in Berkeley, California, which is at the forefront of what may prove to be the defining scientific breakthrough of the 21st century. The CRISPR is a genome editing technology that allows scientists to cut DNA with incredible precision and insert or delete DNA to correct unwanted mutations. To oversimplify the technology, it's a power to edit the building blocks of life, just like text on a computer screen. Not only could it enable scientists to switch off genes that lead to broad spectrum disease, but it will unshackle all of us from the genetics we're born with. The knowledge gained is amazing, and it's just really accelerated basic research. That in itself already transformative, says somebody from the Crick Institute, and the notion that we can actually treat people with genetic diseases in a way that was never possible before is mind-blowing. So
can I ask John a question here?
Sure.
So John, when I hear about CAR-T, that's the chimeric antigen receptor therapy, that's basically giving yourself therapy, and then I hear about CRISPR. Could these two in conjunction essentially be the fountain of youth? You basically give yourself cancer and then you delete it?
It's an interesting question. There's a lot of fascinating research on life extension. I'm under NDA for some of them, but my thesis for 30 years has been that if you look at different species within the same genus, whether turtles or frogs or cows or whatever, the lifespan is very narrowly controlled in different species within the same genus. So it's very clear that lifespan is genetically regulated and the immune system plays a really big role. It's also clear that escaping from the window of longevity is really hard. You just don't see humans that live to be 150 years old. The parabolic asymptote is at about 120 years. So why is that, and why is there no escape? One has to imagine that the mechanisms for constraining age and longevity are hard programmed, and if not so complex that single mutations couldn't overcome them, there may be multiple mechanisms. So doing life extension beyond those asymptotic limits is going to be a very interesting challenge. There are drugs like rapamycin and metformin, which have been shown to extend lifespan in many species. But those are relatively modest extensions. So to answer your question, is it conceivable? Yes. Will it happen in 10 years? Not a prayer. Will it happen in 100 years? I think that's pretty plausible.
I think those drugs also preserve mobility more than actual age extension. So you're able to be more mobile to the last day of your life, so to speak. But also with respect to the CRISPR editing, there was a clinical trial for sickle cell anemia, and they had to actually stop the trial because some people ended up developing cancer. So for some particular mutations, you may be able to treat it, but the side effect may be cancer, and whether or not that cancer then is treatable is another problem. So it's very, very nonlinear, very complex.
Absolutely true. And the manifestation of cancer being kind of the counterpoint to longevity is in no small part related to the role of the immune system in longevity. So the best thing you can do is keep your immune system healthy. If you haven't read Blue Zones by Dan Buettner, it's an epidemiologic look at 5 communities around the world that have both long lifespan and long health span. So people are healthy up until the day they die and they live a long life. And do they use CRISPR? No. They eat healthy, they sleep healthy, they exercise healthy, and they socialize healthy. And so if you want to approach the asymptote that we're born with, following those simple rules as outlined in the Blue Zone is the best evidence we have right now.
Quick point. Medical nanorobotics will make it easier to break that limit that John described.
I'm also wondering, like, as someone who works with seniors, right, the biggest concern they always have is losing their mind, right? So in longevity, I mean, for those who are more involved in the longevity research space, is the idea that preserving the brain and continuing that mind, like, all these Neuralinks and all that stuff into, let's say, a Web 3.0 or 4.0, living on in the mental world, is that part of the thinking? Or because the physical world is hard to maintain, right? Everything, the muscle, nerve, joints, bone. Yes, we could replace a lot of things, but ultimately it's the mind that people fear losing the most. So I'm wondering whether people like to keep it at a certain age and then keep going with that into the metaverse, maybe?
Yeah, the very first startup that pursued that thesis was about 12 or 15 years ago, called Intellitar. And they basically uploaded everything that might characterize your life experience into a digital storage device. I don't think they're around anymore, but the concept is still real. But I mean, it really challenges what is the meaning of life, what is the purpose of life, what is life. But those kind of initiatives have been around for quite a while.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, we've got, so that was CRISPR. The next one is from Shirok via the BBC about Grab in Southeast Asia, which we have some friends from Grab who join us every day, generally, in the other time zone where we meet. How an Uber killer became a powerful Asian super app. Southeast Asian taxi firm Grab is becoming one of Asia's most powerful financial super apps. Indeed.
Jay is here.
Oh, is he on stage? Yep, there he is, Jay. So, any comments on how Grab is becoming a super app, Jay?
Let's just say e-commerce saved us. That's all I'll say.
No, Singapore government saved you too, Jay.
Please.
Yeah. So the next one is from Monica, that the Reserve Bank of Australia hiring for a central bank digital currency. So we can add Australia to the ever-growing list of companies or countries dabbling in central bank digital currencies. And Carl Walker sends in this one that we covered previously about the Israeli firm introduces armed combat drones that look like miniature tanks that can have night vision and a machine gun turret and everything to patrol its borders. A state-owned firm unveiled a remote-controlled armed robot, it says, can patrol battle zones and open fire. And the next one is a really interesting one. Neda on stage here sends in this one from the Daily Mail, that people sync their heart rates with the stories they listen to. As long as they pay attention to the narrative, people's heart rates synchronize with the story they are listening to, researchers led from the Paris Brain Institute. People subconsciously synchronize their heart rates while listening to stories based on the narrative. That's fantastic. And Craig Nilsson sends in this one, that Sweden's central bank governor warns of Bitcoin collapse, says that Bitcoin is like trading stamps. The governor of Sweden's central bank, the Riksbank, is skeptical of Bitcoin and foresees potential collapse looming in the flagship crypto's future. And building the future with 3D printing and real-time visualization, taking a look at 3D printing. I just tweeted it out as the coolest 3D building I've seen yet. Thank you to Poppy for that one. Evan sends in one that Russia publishes plan to tax foreign tech and promote homegrown rivals, as we said was going to happen. And everyone else will do it too, sooner or later. And RCC sends in this one from TechCrunch about a company called Spaceflight will soon ferry payloads from Orbit Fab, GeoJump to lunar orbit. Space rideshare service provider Spaceflight is going to be shuttling customers on a lunar flyby mission next year. So welcome to the space industry. And by the way, this week, SpaceX is sending up the first fully pedestrian consumer crew. Later, I believe, in the next few days.
Civilian crew and doing it for charity.
Yeah. And the next one is from RCC, from Forbes, about an autonomous sea-going tugboat gets ready to launch. The project, named Machine Odyssey, is a tribute to Homer's epic poem, will take a sea-going tug built by Dutch shipbuilders, Damen Shipyards. Fully autonomous tugboat coming your way. And then,
by the way, do we talk about OneWeb in line with SpaceWeb?
No.
I mean, OneWeb, the OneWeb launched during Apple event, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who are launching also the low orbit satellites.
Yes.
They sent out 34 of OneWeb internet satellites to orbit by the Arianespace Soyuz rocket just yesterday.
Cool.
So competition for Starlink.
And then it's Charles just sent me two here. The first from the Washington Post. The government helped Tesla conquer electric cars. Now it's helping Detroit, and Elon Musk isn't happy. Tesla enjoyed hands-off regulation and lush government incentives under Obama, but then came the Biden administration. President Biden held a splashy event at the White House South Lawn last month to announce an ambitious goal to make half of new passenger vehicle sales electric, plug-in hybrid, or fuel cell electric vehicles by 2030. But a key player in the industry was nowhere to be seen. Elon Musk and the country's leading electric car manufacturer Tesla had been left out of the festivities. And what's going on, Biden? I guess is what Elon must be asking. But
sorry, just back to that SpaceX thing, because it is such a good thing. They're trying to raise $200 million for St. Jude.
Okay, and then Charles just sent in another one that just came in a couple hours ago from Reuters, that Uncle Joe Biden to announce alliance with Britain and Australia on tech, cyber, and defense. Joe Biden on Wednesday plans to announce a plan. There you go. It sounds very Swedish, actually. Planning to announce a plan to share advanced technologies in a working group with Britain and Australia, Politico reported, in a possible move. Gee, I wonder. Oh, yes, to push back on China. What a fantastic reveal of a surprise that is. Biden was due to give a 5 p.m. address on national security, but the White House would not provide details. The working group, to be known as AUKUS.
You get catchy title.
Yeah.
A plan for a plan with a working group. It sounds deadly, Tyler.
Will enable the three countries to share information in areas including AI, cyber, underwater systems, and long-range strike capabilities, Politico reported, citing a White House official and a congressional staffer. As part of the pact, the U.S. and the U.K. share their knowledge of how to maintain nuclear defense infrastructure, one of the unidentified sources said. But both characterized the plan as a move by Western allies to counter China's rise in the military and technology sectors. Okay.
I might have had a hand in this.
Okay.
Just saying.
All right.
Something
I feel
interesting.
hurt that Canada was not involved.
What's up with Canada, Heyman? Like,
I know. I think it's our Huawei
decision,
right? It's our Huawei decision. We haven't actually made a firm decision on our Huawei products, right? Is that the case, Charles?
Yeah, it's Canada and New Zealand are way too close to the Chinese on technical questions.
Yeah.
And so if they want to, essentially, if they want to be part of like the super Five Eyes, I guess it's Three Eyes now.
Yeah.
We're losing eyes here.
Well, we're not getting any help for the Michaels, the two Michaels that are Canadians who are under arrest in China. U.S. has not been helping too much. That's why we're also maybe holding our part,
Yeah, well,
maybe.
the leverage there is that we wouldn't be helping you guys until you cleaned up your property markets, which I think is why Trudeau announced that ban on foreigners buying land in
Right.
in Canada. Basically, Canada's property markets have acted like a laundry service
Laundering. Yeah.
for a lot of foreign actors, and the U.S. would like to see Canada get its shit together there much more, and I think Trudeau's obviously facing an election, and so he's maybe going to pivot in the right direction after the election. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't that the property purchases were outlawed. I thought that there was a 30% additional tax to disincentivize them, but the Chinese were more than happy to pay that anyways. So that kind of screwed over the entire housing market and is constantly pushing housing market prices up, which is not unlike a Cold War if you were to think about it globally.
I think they're required though also to rent the properties as well, which is seen to have some downward pressure on housing as well. But I do think there's apparently like new regulations coming into effect about foreign money coming into Canadian banks in order to purchase the houses, which was also a part of the Trudeau plan. But I don't know that it's all been fully released yet.
Okay, next up, we've got, speaking of EVs and Teslas, Ted Abramson from the audience sends in this one, that Amazon's EV company, Rivian, watches its first customer vehicle roll off the production line, the R1T truck. Rivian CEO RJ shared a pivotal moment for the EV automaker as its first customer R1T rolled off the production line today. So there's a new horse in the
Tyler?
race. Yes.
Did before I hopped on, did you get the Gab and Parler data leak?
No.
Okay, I tagged you on that post.
Wait, who will be blamed for that? Parler leak?
It's hang on. Let's see. Epic, EPIK.
Oh yeah. No, Epic is where they're hosted, and the Epic was hacked by Anonymous.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And they've leaked a gigabyte of data.
That's right. And so the platform that hosts things like Parler itself was hacked. And what's interesting about that is it kind of names the names of the bad actors behind a lot of these bad sites. Epic basically is the last place that will host, overtly Nazi websites and things like that. So, but the question is, Anonymous would love to shut those sites down directly and do some kind of social justice retaliation to the creators and hosts of those websites. And now that they've hacked Epic, which is spelled EPIK, they have the data of who everybody is behind all of these sites, which is weird that they would announce that they have it. Because if they truly had it, they wouldn't announce it. They would just now have this, the keys to go ahead and attack all these people without preemptively warning them that we have, the receipts. So it's kind of
which is why some of us believe that this hack was a government hack.
Yeah, seems more.
And that it was actually done by, various Western powers against Parler in particular, because as you might recall, Rebecca Mercer and the Mercers and those who are involved with Renaissance Technology were just hit with the largest tax fine in U.S. history of $7 billion. And there are a lot of people who believe that the Mercers and others associated with Renaissance Technology, that's really like a spying ring for the Russians. And so in the case of Parler's servers are in Russia right now. Like, they're not allowed to be on the Amazon Web Services system. And so there's this question about to what extent in banning these entities from participating, to what extent do they become a part of a part of other foreign actors, or to what extent were they always a part of foreign actors? And also, there's the other one, Getter, which is Jason Miller's outfit, which was also hit with a very large fine as well. And that one's connected to Guo Wongui, who claims to be a Chinese dissident, but a lot of analysts think is actually a Chinese spy. So this role of like espionage, hacking, all that sort of thing is going to come to play a lot more.
Charles, interesting choice of where you'd put your servers if you were Parler, though, right? I mean,
Well, of
aren't there
course.
other Ukraine? I mean, aren't there like a bunch of other places that
No, I mean,
those?
look, it's no secret that Cambridge Analytica obviously had all sorts of weird Russian ties associated with it. Parler, of course, also has weird Russian ties. And, what do these things have in common? Well, they all have a relationship with Rebecca Mercer. And so there's this question as to whether or not this is an influence campaign by the Russians. It isn't. It is one, most likely.
Are
Well,
you
Yeah, they
referring to
did.
the title that just came out, the topics about them and their contribution for the 20 million?
I didn't see that. What was that, Netta?
Hold on, let me read it to you because I just saw something on them today on CNBC. Hold on a second.
Tyler,
Yeah.
in the meantime, Messi is going to start the Tech News Around Africa room in 8 minutes' time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mercer family gave nearly $20 million to dark money GOP fund during the 2020 election. CNBC came out half an hour ago on various places.
Yeah, Russia's arm of propaganda, the Internet Research Agency, is actually quite effective. Really good bang for the buck, so to speak.
A
And also,
question for Charles. Is it possible? I know this is a little bit spy versus spy speculation, but is it possible that they had a list, and the reason they announced that they had it was because they had set traps looking for specific behavior that they thought the announcement of their list would provoke among those people on the list?
Yes, so without going into too much on this app, what I would say is that one can look at the history of Anonymous and how Anonymous was a sort of left-wing thing, but ultimately a number of the people in Anonymous ended up becoming FBI informants, and one can really wonder, maybe Anonymous is in fact a creature of say certain governments, say Western governments now, and maybe in hacking Gab and in hacking Parler, maybe what's happening, again, all hypothetically, of course, because I wouldn't discuss these things in too much detail, but hypothetically speaking, what the interests of the U.S. government working through Anonymous would be to make it look like they had all this information, and to basically deter people from participating in Parler and Gab. And one of the things that's interesting about Parler is that to have an account, I believe you're obliged to give your driver's license, to give all this other information about yourself. And if you look at the history of it, John Matsey, who was the first CEO of it, he's married to a Russian woman. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the circumstances by which he met her are very strange. And that's been sort of profiled in the British press. And then he was fired, from Parler. And then after he was fired, they hired George Farmer, and George Farmer is the husband of Candace Owens, the sort of Black American celebrity. And George Farmer is very close with sort of the Brexit types, and also has his own connections with the Russians. So there's this sort of kind of quiet game being played out right now over the future of the social media platforms, and which platform belongs to which country, which are going to be allowed to have foreign customers, and so forth. And there's an offensive capabilities and defensive capabilities that are being deployed now to deal with this sort of thing. Obviously, Amazon is the U.S. deep state's operation, and you don't often hear all that often about Amazon's products being hacked.
And also to Charles's point, there's a new article by Financial Times that actually goes into details about George Farmer. I'm wondering whether, Charles, is this a poison pill maybe to any efforts to revive Parler? Just to basically say that this is a dead project, you don't even start it up.
Well, I mean, there is a concerted effort by the U.S. government to knock Parler and to keep Parler off the web, and you can see this also with the various attempts to keep things like 8chan off the web, to sort of shut down a lot of these so-called free speech operations. What are the problems of advertising yourself as a free speech platform is that sometimes you can become a target of basically having sort of crazy speech there, and then that speech can be used to compromise people or blackmail them. So you essentially create a blackmail operation. And at one point, I think it's basically like Jeffrey Epstein in your pocket, right? Like that basically everybody's informing on themselves constantly through their phones, and everybody's trying to get into your phone and hack into your phone to know what you're saying. And if you're volunteering all that stuff into a platform where it's controlled by a foreign government, there are all kinds of problems with that. And people who are on this platform should know that sort of thing as well.
Okay, I got to run through. We've got 4 minutes before Messi starts her room. So Messi, if she's on stage, go ahead and get it started, I guess. The Chinese, this from Bloomberg, from Jeff G in the audience. So Heyman might know about this, perhaps. A Chinese firm buys Canada mRNA vaccine tech for $500 million deal.
All right.
Chinese biopharma firm called Everest Medicines will license an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine from Canada's Providence Therapeutics Holdings for $500 million. I guess China's not able to make their own mRNA.
No, it's just a licensing deal.
I know, but
we discussed last time.
Yeah, but they wouldn't license it if they could make their own.
True,
So
or
fast,
take
I guess.
it and make their own. Yes, but they're actually in desperate situation right now, right? Because they're yeah, and also I think I'm not sure what the deal is with BioNTech, right? They have that huge deal with BioNTech to produce internally, and that stopped Taiwan from getting the supplies, right? Because of their special deal. This is just another effort to just make sure that they could keep their economy going. I think. I don't know about this deal about they just licensed it. I don't know because it's not a big company, but the fact that they may have got it cheaper than BioNTech or Moderna, right? The cost wise.
Yeah,
Maybe that's the reason.
I think the other thing to think about is they had been doing a massive amount of vaccine diplomacy globally. And with the emergence of Delta and its apparent resistance to the vaccines targeted against the original strain, that vaccine diplomacy may have backfired, and this may be a hurry-up effort not only to vaccinate the Chinese population, but to resume vaccine diplomacy in ways that may well have failed.
Yeah, well,
would Moderna be?
Hold on. I think, John, I think you're right, because it says in the article that they're going to pay $100 million cash up front and up to $100 million in profit sharing. The deal includes Providence's vaccine in Greater China and countries including they'll gain rights to the vaccine to be used in China and Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. Very interestingly, because China was trying to sell vaccines to Thailand, and Thailand bought them, and they didn't work. Yeah. As everyone in Thailand will tell you, hello from Thailand, where that's the biggest topic in all of Thailand is these Chinese vaccines do not work on Delta, period. So, and the Thai citizens are even protesting in the streets of Bangkok out of anger of how the Thai government has bought Chinese vaccines that don't work and wasted a lot of money in doing so. So, to your point about the vaccine diplomacy, yeah, China wanted to appear to be helping Thailand and, in fact, hurt Thailand. So, it's very interesting, yeah.
And also, I'm wondering also how much did the U.S. allow like Pfizer and Moderna to, all those companies to actually give patent rights or something. Because I think, remember the deal with BioNTech? It was purely a BioNTech deal, right? Directly with Chinese company to manufacture their mRNA. It was not a Pfizer-BioNTech deal.
Oh, right. It says
So I'm
It
just
was
curious also whether there's any.
Fosun, yes.
Fosun Pharmacy.
In fact,
but you got to remember, it's a BioNTech product. Pfizer was partnering to distribute, not necessarily.
Yes.
They're not the owners of the patents.
Right. But the thing
And
is,
there's
it's
been
unique.
Do you know why? I can tell you why, Heyman. It says in the article, it says a deal by Fosun to sell BioNTech mRNA shot in mainland China has yet to be approved by regulators, suggesting it may not be easy to bring in a foreign mRNA vaccine, partly because of political sensitivities.
See, Canada's a friend to everyone.
Tyler, yeah. That BioNTech, Fosun, they tried hard to get a EUA, I think at least almost a year, and still, before that, Liang was here, right? Liang joined the tech newsroom for a period, and it's related to him. But actually, so China still tried to get a Kershin Sinovac to be the biggest vaccines they can get there. So that's why. But still, so will Taiwan benefit from that because they've already got a batch of vaccines for China, but in the end, they still can't get the EUA in time. So eventually, they sell the vaccines to Taiwan. But I think they are still having a hard time to get EUA. So maybe this Canadian company is have someone else in the back to try to get an mRNA and for the vaccine deploy.
And they do have there is a endemic mRNA vaccine maker called Valvax Biotechnology. They're doing apparently stage 3 trials in Nepal like a couple of weeks ago. They were just waiting for the data to come back. So I'm not sure how that's going. Maybe they knew ahead.
Okay. Next one here from Ken from Reuters. Russia fines Facebook for not deleting banned content. A Russian court on Tuesday fined U.S. social media giant Facebook for $288,000 for failing to delete content that Moscow deems illegal.
Shut her down, guys. Shut her down.
Shut it down. Moscow's what was the content exactly? 5 million rubles, part of a big tech.
What is the reason that the token amount of $288,000 would not be, $5 billion? I mean,
it's weird, John. They just don't have any scale of like financial punishment. It's like fine 50,000, Facebook 50K. It's like it's just.
I mean, that's 1 second of net profits.
Yeah.
Could it be that one of the larger investors in Facebook, Yuri Milner, is also Russian?
Yeah.
Just a thought.
In March, state communications regulators started impeding the speed of Twitter for not removing banned material quickly enough. The watchdog had tried to restrict access to an app that Navalny's team planned to use to organize a tactical or smart voting campaign on the election. So here's what's going on, everybody. Here's the nitty-gritty. They have an election coming up. Navalny, which is Putin's main political opponent, they have a plan to use an app to help organize tactically to create a smart voting campaign for the election. Putin doesn't like that. It's being promoted inside of Facebook. They're using Facebook to promote and coordinate and get smart and tactical about the election coming up. And Big Daddy Vladdy doesn't like that because he doesn't like losing elections, everybody. I don't know if you've noticed. But he has no plans of going anywhere. So he wants to shut down anything that would support his political rivals during the election. And so that's why they're using Facebook. Facebook isn't complying with removing the content because there's nothing illegal about the content. And now they're fining Facebook and Twitter.
But Tyler, couldn't they just close? I mean, Russia is not a democracy. You can just close Facebook down like
I
other
think
countries.
that would be just a little too obvious. I mean, people can die of mysterious, poisonings, and at least in a Russian's mind, there's plausible deniability. But shutting Facebook down, I mean, I don't know that there's enough plausible.
No. Tyler, why even shut it down when you can manipulate it, right? When we all know that Facebook can be easily manipulated.
Well, so there's several things going on here at once. One is Yuri Milner's involvement with Facebook. The other is if they had a relationship with Mark Zuckerberg, right, who, by the way, can make all these decisions himself. Mark Zuckerberg could do things like, say, buy a company like Oculus, say, that has no profits but lots of Russian investors, right? And so you don't ban Facebook unless you absolutely had to. You basically use Facebook and put it in a position where you say to it, we're in control of this in Russian territory.
Yeah, and let's not forget that I would preface this discussion with the Russian people know that what the government is saying is propaganda. I think in America, people are inclined to believe or not believe. But in Russia, I would say the level of education, especially from a technical perspective, it's actually very difficult to circumvent these things. And the same kind of problem that is going to happen in China, kids are going to become tech savvy enough to go around the VPN or the lockdowns with VPN. So that's kind of what's probably going to happen in Russia as well.
Okay.
And let me plant a seed for future discussions. Pakistan, Russia are going to coordinate for Afghanistan. So they're actually in talks right now to focus on the need for peace and stability in Afghanistan. They're the ones who have had the most of their fingers inside that country. So that'll be interesting talks ahead.
Next one. I watched a video today of China opening their copper mine, which they had already planned to open. They already had arranged that even before the Taliban came in. And it's expected to be this incredible copper mine, and they're just starting to get it underway. But there was video on the ground of the Chinese shaking hands with the Taliban at the copper mine just south of Kabul, 30 kilometers south of Kabul. So the next one from Joe Williams, Drone Racing League lands $100 million sponsorship deal. Jesus smokies, that's a big sponsorship deal for a drone racing league. So drone racing's becoming a real thing. The next one from BB, Huawei vows to lead in 6G as U.S. and Japan challenge China. Huawei founder urges employees to work to overcome Washington's clampdown. Good luck with that. The next one from Poppy from TechCrunch, Indonesian fintech called Zendit with an X. Send with an X is now a unicorn. Indonesia's got a unicorn with $150 million in fresh funding. So in more Indonesian unicorns. And then BB sends in this one from the South China Morning Post that Beijing pushes stricter online content controls, including review by national rumor debunking mechanisms. Chinese authorities have recently upped their efforts to control online narratives, deciding what counts as truth and what should be dismissed as rumors. And this is news here. Party states all levels of government should strengthen their governance to bring ideology, culture, moral standards, and online behavior under control. Chinese authorities have recently upped their efforts to control online narratives, deciding what's truth. They're now getting into the business of rumor debunking. China's Communist Party and State Council jointly released a set of guidelines for building cyberspace civilization by urging government bodies to further increase and improve control over online content amid Beijing's wider campaign to rein in the country's internet giants. All levels of government should strengthen their governance of the cyberspace environment to bring ideology, culture, moral standards, and online behavior under control, according to new guidelines published by state-run news outlet Xinhua on Tuesday. The all-encompassing guidelines also included regulating internet slang and putting bigger responsibilities on platforms. Regulating internet slang. They should, for example, further regulate how content is produced, published, and spread online. The guideline states the authority will also build a national rumor debunking mechanism based on, like Snopes, basically, based on state website called the China Internet Joint Rumor Debunking Platform, according to the guidelines. The platform was launched last month by China's increasingly powerful internet watchdog, the Cyberspace Administration of China. A few days after it was announced, the website published a promotional music video called Let Rumors Disperse, in which an officer with Beijing's internet police and judge at a court in the city, among others, participated in a song about the harm done by online rumors. The website's new page has articles about anti-fake news pulled together from different state-backed websites. On Tuesday, rumor debunking headlines included China's embassy in Japan rejecting criticisms made by Japan's defense minister, a list of 10 illegal social organizations, a clarification about domestic care training college, and a piece about the recent coronavirus outbreak in Fujian. Chinese authorities have recently upped their efforts to control online narratives, deciding what counts as truth as opposed to falsehoods. Okay, now, interesting related headline is that Wikipedia has basically just kicked out a dozen or so mainland Chinese power users that edit Wikipedia very prolifically. They're very active, super active Wikipedia editors from mainland China, and you can just imagine whose work they are doing, and what kind of narratives.
By the way, I should say China is by no means alone in editing Wikipedia, targeting people.
Yeah,
having been a target of myself from different intelligence agencies. So it's one of the things one should ask oneself is whenever there's negative material placed on somebody's Wikipedia page, is who had an incentive to put this material there? And that's something that's well worth considering.
So there's Wikipedia. The difficulty was the Hong Konger editors and the mainland editors had different versions of the truth, and they were both citing contradictory sources, the sources that had contradictory information. The mainland Chinese were quoting sources as their evidence for their claims. The Hong Kongers had sources for their claims, but they were using mainland China was using mainland Chinese news sources. The Hong Kongers were using Western sources, like Reuters and AP. And the mainlanders said, you're violating the national security law. You're putting out information that is jeopardizing the state, and now we're going to report you to the authorities who will come visit your houses. And they did. And people were arrested and, according to the reports, faced physical punishments. And that's why Wikipedia took the very unusual stance of banning these mainland editors.
Tyler, basically, Wikipedia is just like Google. They are banned in China. So you can imagine who can edit Wikipedia. They are just like the users on Twitter from China.
Yeah.
They only allowed by the government.
Yeah.
So
of course the Chinese editors are the CCP themselves. I mean, it's just a stupid ruse. But the next article says a new chip can decode any type of data sent across the network. A new chip eliminates the need for specific decoding hardware, could boost efficiency of gaming systems, 5G networks, and Internet of Things, and etc. Just tweeted that out.
Tyler, there's one important article. Alvaro Bedoya, did you guys talk about him? He's a new FTC commissioner.
Yeah.
Oh.
Tyler, Messi's room has opened 15 minutes ago.
Yes. Okay. Last headline: SoftBank commits $3 billion more to investing in Latin America tech. Congratulations, Latin America! You're getting SoftBank juicy money, and we will meet again tomorrow. Click on the title of the room and follow the Tech News Club, and have a wonderful Thursday, everybody.